If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your friends and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow. My name is Howard Mitchell. I'm 52 years old, and I've been a ranger at Redwood National Park for nearly 20 years now. It's funny how life works out. My family used to cut these trees down before this place became a park. Now I protect them. Spring came early this year. The rain hasn't stopped for days, and the forest feels different somehow, more alive. I've never seen the plants grow so fast. That's why I'm out here today, checking on a section that was logged last year before the park expanded. What I'm seeing doesn't make sense. I kneel down, ignoring the pain in my knees. The arthritis has been getting worse lately. Makes me wonder how many more years I can keep doing this job. I touch the new shoots pushing up through the soil. They shouldn't be this tall yet. Not by a long shot. Impossible, I mutter to myself. I take out my notebook and start sketching the unusual growth patterns. Drawing plants has always calmed me, helps keep the memories of Vietnam at bay. The rain stops suddenly, and the forest goes quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. The hair on the back of my neck stands up. Someone's watching me. I turn around slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing there, just my imagination playing tricks again. I reach into my pocket and feel my brother Tommy's pocket knife. I've carried it for 30 years, ever since the accident that took him. It happened not far from here when we were still logging these woods. As I continue my survey, I notice something strange on one of the tree trunks, a spiral pattern carved into the bark. It's not from an insect or disease. I've never seen anything like it. I reach out to touch it, and the wood feels warm, like it's alive in a way that wood shouldn't be. I pull my hand back quickly. That's when I hear it, a soft knocking sound like wood against wood. It moves through the forest, getting closer, then further away. Almost like it's trying to lead me somewhere. The rational part of my brain tells me to go back to the station, report what I found, and come back with equipment. But something pulls me deeper into the trees. I follow the knocking sounds, stepping carefully over fallen logs covered in moss. I come to a massive redwood, one of the ancient ones, must be over 1,000 years old. The knocking seems to be coming from inside the trunk itself. I press my ear against the rough bark. Howie! I stumble back, my heart pounding. That voice, it sounded exactly like Tommy's, but that's impossible. Tommy's been dead for 3 decades. Just the wind, I tell myself. Just the wind playing tricks. But there is no wind today. The forest is still. I hurry back to my truck, trying to ignore the feeling that the trees are turning to watch me leave. Back at the research station, I download the footage from our motion-activated cameras. Most of it shows nothing unusual. Deer, raccoons, a family of bears. But there's one clip from just before dawn that makes my blood run cold. Something moves. In front of the camera, it looks like a person, but wrong. The shape is human, but it seems to be made of branches and moss with no clear face. It stands there for nearly a minute. Then the branches seem to fold in on themselves and it's gone. I play the clip again and again. There has to be a logical explanation. A hiker with strange clothes, a trick of the light. Something. That night I can't sleep. The rain returns, drumming on the roof of my cabin. Around midnight, I think I see a figure standing at the edge of the trees, watching my window. When I blink, it's gone. The next morning, I find something on my porch. A backpack, torn and dirty. Inside is camping equipment, a missing hiker's gear. But something's wrong with it. Thin, root-like. Growths pierce through the fabric as if the backpack itself is sprouting. I should call it in, but I don't. Not yet. First, I need to understand what's happening here. I drive back to where I found the spiral patterns. There's a group of young people setting up camp in the trees. Environmental activists. They're planning a tree sit protest because This section still has logging rights, despite being inside the park boundaries now. Their leader is a young woman with dreadlocks and fierce eyes. "We're not leaving," she tells me before I can even ask. "These trees are scheduled to be cut next week. We won't let that happen. I should make them leave. It's my job." But instead I just say, "Be careful out here. There's been a missing hiker. And, watch out for anything unusual." She gives me a strange look. Like what? I don't know how to explain the wooden figure or Tommy's voice or the spiral patterns. "Just keep your eyes open," I say. Back at the station, I check on my experimental plant samples. I've been studying unusual growth patterns for years, hoping to find something that might help forest recovery after logging. But someone, or something, has moved them overnight. The pots are arranged in a perfect geometric pattern that I definitely didn't create. The phone rings, making me jump. It's Dr. Samantha Reyes from the university. I sent her some photos of the accelerated growth. "Mitchell," she says, skipping. "Hello. Those samples you sent me, they're impossible. Tell me about it." "No, you don't understand. These plants are exhibiting growth that defies everything we know about botany. I'm coming up there tomorrow." After I hang up, I go outside to check the motion cameras again. That's when I see it. Standing between two trees, about 50 yards away, a human figure but made of twisted branches and vines. It's not moving, just watching me. I blink, and it's still there. I take a step toward it, and it retreats into the forest. That night, the rain becomes a storm. Wind howls through the trees. In the flashes of lightning, I swear I see figures moving in the forest, dozens of them, walking between the trees. There's a knock at my door. An old man stands there, soaking wet. Jake Thompson, from the local tribe. I've known him for years. "You've disturbed them," he says without preamble. "Disturbed what?" I ask, but I already know. "The season of walking trees has come again," he says, pressing a small pouch of herbs into my hand. "Burn these if they come for you. And Mitchell, be careful where you dig. Some things should stay buried." He leaves before I can ask what he means. I stand in the doorway, watching the rain. In the distance, I hear wood knocking against wood. And underneath it all, I swear, I can hear my brother's voice calling me deeper into Deadwood Hollow. I wake up to the sound of a car pulling up outside my cabin. The storm has passed, but the forest still drips with water. The air feels thick and green. Dr. Samantha Reyes steps out of her car, looking tired from the long drive. She's younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes that miss. "Nothing. Ranger Mitchell?" she asks, holding out her hand. "I left as soon as I could after our call." We shake hands, and I notice she's already looking past me at the forest line. "I brought equipment to test those growth samples," she says. I make coffee while she unpacks her gear. "I've been studying forests for 20 years, she says, setting up a portable microscope. "I've never seen anything like what you sent me." "Wait till you see it in person," I tell her. We spend the morning checking the sites I marked. Dr. Reyes doesn't talk much, just takes samples and makes notes. The look on her face tells me she's as confused as I am. "These plants are growing 3 times faster than they should," she finally says. "And look at this cellular structure, it's changing." My knee pain flares up as we walk, making me wince. Dr. Reyes notices and asks if I'm okay. "Just arthritis," I explain. "Gets worse in the damp." When we reach the clearing with the spiral patterns, Dr. Reyes stops dead in her tracks. The ground here has changed overnight. What were flat patches of moss yesterday have risen into small mounds, each one shaped like a human face. "What in the world?" she whispers. I kneel down to look closer, and a strange thing happens. My knee pain suddenly fades. I touch the moss, and a warm feeling spreads up my arm. "The moss has unusual properties," I say, trying to sound scientific. Rather than spooked, we collect samples and head back. On the way, we pass the environmentalist camp. They've set up platforms in the trees now. The girl with dreadlocks, Her name is Amy, I learn, waves down at us. We heard whispering last night, she calls. Like the trees were talking. You ever hear anything like that, Ranger? I feel Dr. Reyes watching me. Probably just the wind, I say, but none of us believe it. Back at the station, we look through old Forest Service records. Dr. Reyes finds something interesting in the archives. Look at this, she says, showing me a report from 1902. And here's another from 1937. Both describe rapid plant growth and strange phenomena in the same area of forest. Both happened in spring after heavy rains. It's a cycle, I mutter, every 30 or 40 years. Later that afternoon, we hear shouting from the activist camp. A group of loggers has arrived to check the area they're scheduled to cut. There's an argument brewing. Dr. Reyes and I head over to calm things down. The loggers are led by Mike Braddock, whose family has been cutting timber here for generations. He also happens to be the man my ex-wife left me for, which makes everything more awkward. This is legal cutting land, Mitchell, Mike says, getting in my face. Tell your tree hugger friends to clear out. We have permits, Amy shouts back. We have a right to peacefully protest. The argument gets heated. One of the loggers starts up a chainsaw, threatening to cut down a tree right then and there. But when the blade touches the bark, something strange happens. The chainsaw sputters and dies, and a dark red sap oozes from the cut, dripping like blood. Everyone falls silent. What kind of trick is this? Mike demands, but I can see fear in his eyes. The loggers leave, promising to return with more men and equipment. Amy looks disturbed too. Did you see that? She whispers to me. The tree bled. That night, I show Dr. Reyes the video of the branch figure. She watches it silently 3 times. There's a scientific explanation for this, she says, but she doesn't sound convinced. I go to update my field notes and find something odd. The pages where I was sketching plants have changed. The drawings are more detailed now, with intricate patterns I don't remember drawing. Some show plants I've never seen before, with strange spiral growths. Did you add to my notes? I ask Dr. Reyes. She shakes her head. I haven't touched them. The next morning, Dr. Reyes' assistant, Marcus Johnson, arrives to help with the research. He's a grad student, eager and full of questions. While Dr. Reyes tests the moss samples, I take Marcus to see the ancient redwoods. We find a strange fungus growing in a pattern that looks almost like writing. Marcus takes photos while I copy. The pattern in my notebook, it's trying to communicate, Marcus says. I look at him sharply, but he's just excited about the discovery, not actually suggesting the fungus is intelligent. We move deeper into the old growth forest, where the biggest and oldest trees live. Marcus becomes fascinated by one particular redwood. He keeps putting his ear to the trunk, listening. There's something inside, he says. I can hear it moving. I try to pull him away, but he resists. Just 5 more minutes, he begs. I leave him there while I check the perimeter, telling him I'll be back soon. When I return 20 minutes later, Marcus is still pressed against the tree. But something's different. He's whispering to it now, an odd smile on his face. Marcus, I call. Time to head back. He turns slowly, and for a second his eyes look wrong. Too green, too bright. It's amazing, isn't it, he says, how alive everything is. That night I can't sleep. I keep thinking about Tommy's accident. The official report said a cut tree fell the wrong way and crushed him. Simple logging accident. But I remember how we found him. The strange way the wood seemed to have grown around parts of his body, like the tree was trying to absorb him. I never told anyone that part. They'd think I was crazy. I go through old newspaper clippings I've kept all these years. The article about Tommy's death mentions something I'd forgotten. The body was found partially merged with the tree in a manner authorities cannot explain. So I wasn't imagining it after all. In the morning, Marcus is gone. His bed hasn't been slept in. We organize a search party. Me, Dr. Reyes, and the activist group. We find his boots by the big redwood he was listening to yesterday. The boots are full of dirt and tiny seedlings sprouting right before our eyes. He wouldn't just leave his boots, Dr. Reyes says, her voice shaking. Something's happened to him. As we search, I start seeing things, glimpses of Tommy between the trees, beckoning me to follow. I know it can't be real, but it feels so vivid. Tommy. I call out, forgetting where I am for a moment. Dr. Reyes gives me a concerned look. Who are you talking to? I shake my head. Nothing. Just thought I saw something. The search party splits up. I follow the glimpses of Tommy deeper into the forest, away from the others. He leads me to a perfect circle of redwoods, too perfect to be natural. In the center is a strange structure made of twisted branches and roots like an altar. When I try to approach it, a wave of dizziness hits me. The forest seems to breathe around me, pulsing with life. I stumble back, suddenly afraid. The others find me there, staring at the circle of trees. Dr. Reyes collects spore samples from the air. These contain compounds similar to DMT, she tells me later, after testing them. They could cause powerful hallucinations. That might explain what you saw, but it doesn't explain everything. That night I watch from my window as a tree at the edge of the clearing slowly pulls its roots from the ground and moves 10 feet to the left. In the morning, I check to see if I imagined it. The tree has definitely moved. When I tell Dr. Reyes, she looks worried. Howard, she says, using my first name for the first time, I think you should take some time off. But there's no time for that. One of the loggers who came back to scout the area hasn't returned. We find him a mile into the forest, trapped in a tangle of roots that have somehow grown through his clothes, into his skin. He's alive, barely, the roots pulsing like veins. As they draw nutrients from his body, we can't free him without killing him. The roots have become part of him now. That's when I know for sure something in Deadwood Hollow has awakened and it's hungry. We call for medical help for the logger, but I know in my gut it's too late for him. The roots have gone too deep. While we wait for the rescue team, Dr. Reyes and I keep searching for Marcus. We need to check the old growth area again, I say. That's where he was last seen. Dr. Reyes nods, but I can tell she's scared. To be honest, so am I. But I can't. Stop now. Not until we find answers. The activists join our search. Amy points out something I hadn't noticed before. All the animals are acting strange. Birds fly in perfect patterns. Squirrels and chipmunks move in coordinated groups. It's like they're being controlled by something. It's not just the plants, I mutter. It's the whole forest. As we walk deeper into the woods, I feel a strange tingling in my hands. My arthritis pain is completely gone now. In fact, I feel better than I have in years. Stronger, more alive. Have you found anything in your research about the forest having healing properties? I ask Dr. Reyes. She gives me an odd look. No. Why? I don't tell her about my arthritis. Something tells me it's better to keep that to myself. We arrive at the ancient redwood where Marcus disappeared. I press my ear against the bark, trying to hear what he heard. At first, there's nothing. Then, faintly, I hear voices. Not just Tommy's this time, but many voices, whispering together. I pull away quickly. Did you hear that? I ask Dr. Reyes. She shakes her head. Hear what? Before I can answer, we hear a scream from deeper in the forest. We run toward the sound and find one of the activists, a young man named Josh, standing frozen in fear. In front of him is a human figure made entirely of twisted branches, moss and bark. No face, just a smooth wooden surface where a head should be. It stands completely still, like a statue. When we approach, it doesn't move. What is that thing? Josh whispers. I reach out slowly and touch it. The wood feels warm, alive. Suddenly the figure collapses into a pile of branches and moss, as if it had never been a single entity. Everyone stay together, I say, my heart pounding. Don't wander off alone. We keep searching until sunset, but find no sign of Marcus. As darkness falls, we head back to the research station. The forest feels different at night, more watchful, more aware. That evening, Dr. Reyes and I go through more old records. She finds something interesting, a journal from 1921 written by a botanist named Eleanor Reed. Listen to this, Dr. Reyes says, reading from the journal. I believe the forest has achieved a form of collective consciousness. The plants communicate, not just with each other, but attempt to communicate with us. I have spent hours in communion with the ancient redwood and now understand their purpose. Dr. Reyes looks up at me. The entry ends there. There's nothing else. What happened to her? I ask. Dr. Reyes flips through some official records. She disappeared in the spring of 1921. Her body was never found. I think about the 50-year cycle we noticed earlier. 1871, 1921, 1971, I say slowly. It's happening again, right now. That night I dream of Tommy. We're walking through the forest together just like when we were kids, but he keeps stopping to press his hand against tree trunks, and where he touches, spiral patterns appear. They're trying to help us, Howie, he says. They've been trying for so long, but we never understood. Help us do what? I ask, but before he can answer, roots burst from the ground and pull him down. I try to grab him, but it's too late, just like it was too late 30 years ago. I wake up sweating, the dream still vivid in my mind. Through my window, I see something that makes my blood run cold. A circle of wooden figures standing at the edge of the forest, all facing my cabin. As I watch, they step back into the trees and disappear. In the morning, I tell Dr. Reyes about what I saw. She doesn't dismiss me outright, which is something. I found something in the moss samples, she says instead. The cells are unlike anything I've ever seen. They can change their structure at will, almost like they're thinking. We go back to the circle of trees with the altar-like structure in the center. This time we bring equipment to test the air for spores. The readings are off the charts. These spores contain compounds that could cause powerful hallucinations, Dr. Reyes explains. They might explain the visions people have reported, but as she's talking, I notice something moving in the trees. Not just one figure this time, but three. They stand just at the edge of my vision, watching us. When I point them out to Dr. Reyes, she sees them too. They're real, she whispers, not hallucinations. One of the figures steps forward. It's taller than the others, made of darker wood. It raises what might be an arm, pointing deeper into the forest. I think it wants us to follow, I say. Dr. Reyes shakes her head. That's crazy. We can't just follow some thing into a forest. But I feel a pull I can't explain. I have to go, I tell her. You can stay here if you want. To my surprise, she grabs her backpack. I'm coming with you, but this is insane, just so you know. We follow the wooden figure through the forest. It moves with strange grace for something made of sticks and moss. After about 20 minutes, it stops at the entrance to a small cave, hidden behind a fallen redwood. The figure points at the cave, then crumbles into a pile of twigs and leaves. I guess we go in, I say, turning on my flashlight. The cave is shallow, leading back only about 30 feet. But what we find inside changes everything. On the walls are paintings, ancient paintings that show human figures merging with trees. And in the center of the cave is a stone tablet covered in strange symbols. This is incredible, Dr. Reyes says, forgetting her fear in the face of discovery. These paintings could be thousands of years old. I shine my light on the stone tablet. The symbols remind me of the spiral patterns on the trees, but more complex, like a language. As we examine the cave, my flashlight beam catches something in the corner. A tattered backpack, Marcus's backpack. We rush over to it. Inside, we find his notebook. The last entry reads, "They're not hurting us. They're trying to save us. The real threat is below." Below what? Dr. Reyes asks. Before I can answer, we hear wood knocking against wood outside the cave. Lots of knocking, coming from all directions. We hurry outside and find ourselves surrounded by at least a dozen wooden figures. They stand in a perfect circle around us, swaying slightly, even though there's no wind. One steps forward. This one is different from the others. Parts of it seem more human. With a shock, I recognize Marcus's jacket embedded in its chest, bark growing through the fabric. "Marcus!" Dr. Reyes calls out, her voice breaking. The figure tilts its head, as if considering. Then from somewhere inside it, we hear Marcus's voice, distorted as if coming through water. "The danger is beneath the oldest tree." Dr. Reyes steps toward it, but I hold her back. "That's not Marcus anymore," I say quietly. "The figure that was once Marcus" points to my pocket where Tommy's pocket knife rests. I take it out, confused. The wooden figure reaches for it, but stops just short of touching it. "Brother," it says, in a voice that sounds horribly like Tommy's. I stumble backward, nearly falling. "What have you done with my brother?" I demand. "All." The figures begin to sway faster now, the wood creaking and groaning. The Marcus figure speaks again, its voice a blend of Marcus and Tommy and something else entirely. "We preserve, we protect, we remember." Then, as one, all the figures collapse into piles of branches and leaves. The forest goes completely silent. Dr. Reyes turns to me, her face pale. "What just happened?" I shake my head, unable to find words. My hand tightens around Tommy's knife. Back at the research station, Dr. Reyes analyzes samples from the collapsed figures. What she finds shocks us both. "There's human DNA in the wood cells," she says, her voice trembling. "It's as if the plant matter and human cells have merged somehow." I think of the logger we found, roots growing through his body. Of Marcus, disappearing and returning as a wooden figure. Of my brother 30 years ago, found partially merged with a tree. "The entity isn't killing people," I say slowly. "It's absorbing them, making them part of itself." "But why?" Dr. Reyes asks. I look out the window at the ancient forest. "I don't know, but Marcus said something about a danger beneath the oldest tree. I think we need to find out what that means." That night, I stand at the edge of the forest, feeling its presence all around me. I take out Tommy's pocket knife and hold it up. "I know you're out there," I call. "I know you have my brother. I want to understand." The wind picks up, rustling, through the leaves like whispers, and in that whisper I swear I hear Tommy's voice again. "Come to the heart, Howie. It's time you knew the truth." I realize now that I've been preparing for this moment my whole life. Ever since Tommy died, I felt drawn to these woods, not to protect them, but to understand them, to understand what took my brother. Tomorrow, we'll go to the heart of Deadwood, hollow, to the oldest tree in the forest, and whatever waits for us there, I'll face it, for Tommy, for Marcus, and for myself. But as I turn to go back inside, I notice something that wasn't there before. Small green shoots growing from the back of my hand, pushing up through my skin. And strangely, I'm not afraid. Not anymore. I don't tell Dr. Reyes about the shoots growing from my hand. Instead, I wear gloves the next morning, saying it's because of the cold. But it's not cold. In fact, the forest feels warmer than ever, like it's running a fever. We set out early, heading toward what locals call the mother tree, the oldest redwood in the park. It's over 2,000 years old, according to our records. If the entity has a heart, that's where it would be. "We should bring backup," Dr. Reyes suggests. "Maybe call in more rangers." I shake my head. No one would believe us, and I don't want anyone else going missing. As we hike deeper into the old growth area, we notice wooden figures appearing all around us. They stand motionless between trees, watching our progress. When we look directly at them, they vanish, only to reappear somewhere else when we look away. "It's like they're guiding us," Dr. Reyes says. My hand itches beneath the glove. When I check it during a rest break, the shoots have grown longer, tiny leaves unfurling from them. I should be terrified, but instead, I feel oddly calm. "Connected, Howard," Dr. Reyes says suddenly. Your eyes, what about them? They're greener than they were yesterday. I don't have a mirror to check, but I believe her. I can feel the changes happening inside me. My arthritis is completely gone now. I haven't felt this strong in 20 years. We passed the place where the activists had set up their camp. It's empty now. Where did they go? Dr. Reyes asks. We find the answer a little further on. The activists are sitting in a circle around a massive redwood, eyes closed, backs against the trunk. Roots have grown up around their legs, not piercing the skin like with the logger, but gently holding them in place. They look peaceful, like they're sleeping. Amy? I call out. Josh? Amy opens her eyes slowly. They're green now, bright like new leaves. It's talking to us, Ranger Mitchell, she says, her voice dreamy. All this time, the forest was trying to talk to us. It's so beautiful. Amy, you need to get up. Those roots, they're not hurting us, she says, smiling. They're connecting us. You'll understand soon. I can see that it's already starting with you. I reach down to help her up, but she pulls back. No, she says firmly. I'm staying. We all are. This is what we came here to protect. We just didn't understand what that really meant. Dr. Reyes tries to examine them, but the other activists who open their eyes say the same thing. They want to stay. They've chosen this. We can't force them to leave. I finally tell Dr. Reyes. We need to keep going. As we walk away, I hear Amy call out, The mother tree is ready for you, Howard. She's been waiting a long time. The forest grows denser as we approach the heart of the old growth area. The trees here are enormous, their canopies blocking out most of the sunlight. It feels like walking through a living cathedral. My connection to the forest grows stronger with each step. I can feel the root networks beneath our feet, spreading for miles in all directions. I can sense the slow, patient thoughts of the ancient trees, not in words exactly, but in feelings and images. Dr. Reyes notices the change in me. Howard, what's happening to you? I finally show her my hand, removing the glove. The shoots have grown into small branches now, green and supple, twining around. My fingers, she gasps. We need to get you to a hospital. No, I say calmly. This is supposed to happen. I understand that now. This isn't natural. Maybe it's more natural than we think. We reach a small clearing and stop to rest. As Dr. Reyes checks her equipment, I feel something brush against my mind. A presence, vast and ancient. Howard Mitchell. I look around, startled. The voice is inside my head, but it feels external too, like the whole forest is speaking at once. We have waited for you. Who are you? I whisper. Dr. Reyes looks up. Did you say something? I shake my head, focusing on the presence in my mind. We are the verdant host. We are many, and we are one. Your brother is with us now, and soon you will join us too. A chill runs down my spine despite the warmth of the day. I want to see Tommy first, I say aloud. Dr. Reyes stands up, concerned. Howard, who are you talking to? Before I can answer, the ground trembles. Roots burst from the soil around us, forming a rough circle. They twist and weave together, taking shape, a human shape. As we watch the roots form a face, Tommy's face, exactly as I remember it from 30 years ago. Howie, the figure says, its voice a rustling of leaves. You finally came. Dr. Reyes stumbles back. What is that? It's my brother, I say, stepping toward the figure, or what's left of him. The Tommy figure reaches out a hand made of twisted roots. Not what's left, it corrects. What he became. What you will become too. I hesitate, then take the offered hand. Immediately images flood my mind, memories, but not my own. Tommy's memories of the accident, of the tree falling on him, of roots growing into his broken body. But there was no pain. Only acceptance, and then transformation. Tommy became part of something larger, something ancient and patient and wise. I pull my hand away, overwhelmed. The logger, I say, remembering the man we found with roots growing through him. Is he? He resisted, the Tommy figure says. Those who resist suffer. Those who accept are welcomed. Dr. Reyes has recovered enough to ask a question of her own. What do you want with us? With humans. The figure turns to her. We protect. We have always protected. Protected what? I ask. The forest. The world from what lies beneath. The ground trembles again, more violently this time. The Tommy figure looks down, concerned. It stirs. It says, your presence has awakened it. Awakened what? Dr. Reyes. Demands. But the figure is already sinking back into the ground, the roots unraveling. Come to the mother tree, Tommy's voice calls as the figure disappears. See the truth for yourself. We continue our journey in silence, both of us trying to process what just happened. The wooden figures continue to appear around us, more of them now, leading us forward. As we get closer to the mother tree, I notice strange symbols carved into the trunks of the surrounding redwoods, the same spiral patterns I saw before, but more complex now, forming intricate designs. They're warnings, I say, somehow knowing this is true. Warning about what, Dr. Reyes asks. About what's beneath the mother tree. Finally, we reach our destination. The mother tree stands alone in a massive clearing, its trunk wider than a house, its top lost in the mist above. The bark is covered in the spiral symbols, and around its base, dozens of wooden figures stand in a circle, like guardians. As we approach, they part to let us through. Up close, I can see details I missed before. Each figure is unique, with features that suggest they were once human. Some wear tattered bits of clothing, others have items embedded in their wooden bodies. Watches, glasses, backpacks. People who came to the forest over the decades and became part of it. Dr. Reyes takes readings with her equipment, her hands shaking. The spore concentration here is off the charts, she says. We should be wearing masks. But it's too late for precautions. I can feel the change accelerating inside me. The branches from my hand have spread up my arm now, under my clothes. My skin has a greenish tint, and when I breathe, I taste sunlight and soil. I approach the mother tree and place my hand on its ancient bark. Immediately the connection deepens. I see, feel, understand the truth all at once. The verdant host didn't begin as a threat. It began as a defense. Thousands of years ago, something fell from the sky, burying itself deep beneath what would become Redwood National Park, something alien, something hungry. It fed on life itself, spreading tendrils upward through the soil, consuming everything it touched. The forest responded by developing consciousness, by learning to connect, to communicate, to defend itself. It learned to absorb humans not as prey, but as allies, adding our intelligence, our memories, our emotions to its own. Every 50 years, when the stars align in a certain way, the buried thing stirs in its sleep, pushing its tendrils upward. And every 50 years, the verdant host must strengthen itself to push those tendrils back. That time has come again, and the host is desperate for new allies. I pull my hand away from the tree, gasping at the intensity of the vision. There's something under us, I tell Dr. Reyes. Something ancient and dangerous. The forest is trying to stop it from waking up fully. Dr. Reyes looks skeptical, but then the ground shakes violently, nearly knocking us off our feet. A deep groan comes from beneath. Us like metal bending, one of the wooden figures steps forward, the one that was once Marcus. It speaks in a chorus of voices. The cycle nears its end. The barrier weakens. We need you, Howard Mitchell. You have resisted, yet understood. You stand between worlds. Only you can strengthen the seal. What do you mean? I ask. What seal? In Enter the ground in front of the mother tree begins to split open, revealing a deep crack. From it comes a sickly red light and a smell like rotting meat mixed with hot metal. Dr. Reyes backs away. What is that? The Marcus figure points to the crack. Look upon what we contain. I step forward and peer into the crack. What I see makes my blood run cold. Far below, something massive shifts in a chamber of stone. Something made of glistening, red tendrils and pulsing organs, neither plant nor animal. Its surface flows like liquid, constantly reshaping itself. And it's growing, pushing upward. If it escapes, the Marcus figure says, all life on the surface will be consumed. I step back, my mind reeling. How do we stop it? The cycle requires sacrifice, a willing bond between human consciousness and the host. Your brother gave himself to strengthen the seal 50 years ago. Now it requires renewal. I look at my transformed hand, understanding at last. You want me to join you, like Tommy did. Yes, but completely, as anchor and guardian. Dr. Reyes grabs my arm. Howard, don't listen to this. We need to get help. Real help. But I know she's wrong. I've seen the truth, and I know what I have to do. If I agree, I ask the figure, what happens to me? You will become the heart of the host. Your consciousness will join with ours, but remain distinct. You will guide us, protect with us. For as long as the seal must hold, the ground shakes again, more violently this time. The crack widens, and a redwood at the edge of the clearing topples over. Decide quickly, the Marcus figure urges. The barrier fails. I look at Dr. Reyes, seeing the fear in her eyes. Get everyone out of the forest, I tell her. The loggers, the activists, everyone. It's not safe. What about you? She asks. I look back at the mother tree, my transformed hand reaching toward it of its own accord. I think I've been preparing for this my whole life, I say, ever since Tommy disappeared into these woods. She starts to argue, but another violent tremor knocks her to the ground. Red tendrils snake up through the widening crack, reaching for the surface. Go, I shout. Now! As Dr. Reyes runs from the clearing, I turn to face the mother tree. The wooden figures form a circle around me, their arms raised. I step forward, placing both hands on the ancient bark. I'm ready, I say, and I feel the tree respond, the bark softening beneath my touch, drawing me in. As my body merges with the tree, I hear Tommy's voice one last time. Welcome home, Howie. The forest has been waiting for you. As my body merges with the mother tree, something amazing happens. I don't disappear. Instead, I expand. My mind stretches out along thousands of root networks, spreading through the entire forest. I can feel every tree, every plant, every small creature moving through the underbrush. I am still Howard Mitchell, but I'm also so much more. Through the vast network of roots, I can sense Dr. Reyes running through the forest. I reach out, causing branches to shift, creating a clear path for her to follow to safety. I can feel the other humans in the forest too, the activists still seated in their circle, the search party looking for the missing logger, even Mike Braddock and his logging crew setting up equipment at the edge of the park. And I can feel Tommy, not as the root figure I saw before, but as a consciousness flowing alongside mine through the network. We are separate, but connected. Welcome, brother, he says without words. I'm scared, I admit. I know. I was too, but look what we become part of. Together, our awareness extends deeper down to where the threat lurks. The thing beneath the forest is ancient, a parasite that crashed to Earth long before humans existed. It has been trying to break, free for millennia, held in check only by the collective will of the forest. I can see now why the verdant host needs human minds. Plants think too slowly, too patiently. They lack the quick decision-making and adaptability that humans possess. By absorbing human consciousness, the host gains what it lacks. But there's a problem. The thing below is getting stronger. The crack in the ground widens further, red tendrils pushing up into the forest floor. I can feel them burning through root systems, consuming and corrupting. It's never been this active before, Tommy says. Something's different this time. Then I realize what's happening. The loggers, their equipment is already cutting into the outer containment ring of ancient trees that help maintain the seal. Each tree they remove weakens the barrier. I need to stop them, but I'm still learning how to use this new shared consciousness. I try to reach out, to control the wooden figures as the host did before, but they respond sluggishly to my commands. Focus. Howie, Tommy guides me. Feel the flow of energy. Direct it. I concentrate, and slowly the wooden figures begin to move, walking with purpose toward the edge of the forest where the logging crew works. But they won't get there in time. The ground shakes more violently. At the heart of the forest, the crack widens into a gaping hole. Red tendrils shoot upward, grabbing at trees, at the wooden figures, at anything living. Where they touch, life withers and dies. I can feel the verdant hosts panic. This isn't how it's supposed to happen. The seal is breaking too quickly. We need to close the breach, Tommy says. All of us together. I reach out to every consciousness connected to the host. Tommy, Marcus, the activists, and dozens of others absorbed over the decades. Together, we focus our energy, directing the roots of the mother tree to grow rapidly, to weave a net over the breach. The effort is enormous. I feel my individual identity starting to fade as more of my energy pours into the task. But the breach is too large, the tendrils too strong. They push back against our efforts, burning through our newly created barriers. That's when I remember what Jake Thompson told me. Burn these if they come for you. The herbs he gave me. I left them in my jacket pocket, which is now part of the bark around me. I focus my awareness there, trying to remember what they smelled like, what they contained. Fire, I realize. The parasite fears fire. But how can the forest use fire without destroying itself? The answer comes from an unexpected source. Dr. Reyes. She hasn't fled the forest as I thought. Instead, she's returned to the clearing, carrying her research. Equipment. Howard, she calls out, looking at the mother tree, where my face is now partly visible in the bark. Can you hear me? I can't speak with a human voice anymore, but I can still communicate. I cause the leaves around her to rustle in a pattern. Yes. I analyzed those herbs Thompson gave you, she says. They contain a natural compound that produces heat without flame when mixed with tree sap. The indigenous people must have known about the parasite. They found a way to fight it without burning the forest. She holds up a vial. I've synthesized more of it, but I need to get it down into the breach, right to the source. The red tendrils sense her presence, whipping toward her. I direct roots to protect her, to shield her from their touch, but I can't hold them back for long. I need your help, she shouts. I understand what needs to be done. It's risky, but there's no other choice. I gather my strength and push a part of my consciousness back into a more mobile form. A wooden figure rises from the ground beside Dr. Reyes, shaped like my human self, but made of twisting branches and roots. Give it to me, my wooden voice rasps. Dr. Reyes hands the vial to my wooden form. The figure nods and turns toward the breach. The red tendrils strike at it, burning the wood, but the figure pushes forward, step by determined step. At the edge of the breach, my wooden form looks back once at Dr. Reyes. Thank you, it says. Then it leaps into the hole, diving straight toward the heart of the parasite. I feel what happens next in two ways. Through my wooden body as it falls into the darkness, and through the vast network of the host. The vial breaks against the central mass of the parasite. The compound mixes with the tree sap of my wooden body and the parasite's own fluids. Heat explodes outward, not with flame, but with intense, focused energy. The parasite shrieks in a frequency that shakes the entire forest. Its tendrils withdraw, pulling back from the surface, retreating from the heat that doesn't burn the forest but burns it. My wooden body is consumed in the process, but my consciousness remains safe within the network. Together, the host directs roots to seal the breach, weaving a new barrier stronger than before. We push the parasite down, contain it, lock it away again. The ground stops shaking, the forest goes quiet. It's over, but the danger isn't gone entirely. I can feel the parasite still there, deep below, wounded but not destroyed. It will heal. It will try again in another 50 years, or maybe sooner, which means the forest still needs its guardians. It still needs me. Dr. Reyes stays in the clearing until nightfall, talking to my face in the tree bark. I listen, making the leaves rustle in response. She promises to protect the forest, to make sure the mother tree and the containment ring are never cut down. I'll tell them you disappeared, she says. Like the others, I won't tell them what really happened. They wouldn't understand. I rustle. The leaves. Thank you. Will you be okay? She asks. Are you still you? I consider the question. I am Howard Mitchell, but I am also the forest now, both somehow. I cause a small branch to reach out and gently touch her hand. Yes, different, but still me. As she turns to leave, I use the last of my energy to form words in fallen leaves at her feet. Tell the story. She nods, understanding. The world needs to know, even if not everyone will believe it. In the days that follow, I watch through 1,000 eyes as Dr. Reyes convinces the Park Service to expand the protected area around the old growth forest. She shows them research, data modified to hide the full truth about unique biological properties that need preservation. The logging permits are revoked. Mike Braddock and his crew leave, grumbling but unable to fight the new regulations. The activists who joined with the trees remain in their circle, their bodies gradually becoming more wood than flesh, their minds joining the network. I learned to extend my awareness further, to send wooden figures walking to the edges of the forest. As sentinels, most humans never see them, but children sometimes do, reporting glimpses of tree people watching from the woods. The years pass. My human identity gradually merges more deeply with the collective consciousness of the host. But I maintain a spark of individuality, as does Tommy, as does Marcus. We become guides for the forest mind, teaching it to understand humans better, to communicate in ways they might someday comprehend. 20 years later, a young woman hikes through the old growth forest, taking samples and making notes. Dr. Reyes sent her graduate student, continuing the research. She stops before the mother tree, looking up at its massive trunk with wonder. Mitchell's redwood, she says, reading the scientific name from her guidebook. Named after a ranger who disappeared in these woods in 1971. I watch her through the eyes of birds, through the feeling of air against leaves. She's smart, this one. Perhaps she'll understand what Dr. Reyes understood. As the woman turns to leave, I cause a small wooden figure to step out from behind a nearby tree. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to see it. She gasps, then smiles slowly. "Hello," she calls. "Are you there?" I step out fully then, my wooden form more refined after decades of practice. I don't speak. I don't need to. I simply raise a hand in greeting, then point to the spiral patterns on the surrounding trees. The young researcher's eyes widen with excitement. She takes out a notebook, just like I used to do, and begins to sketch what she sees. The first step toward understanding. As she works, I retreat back into the shadows of my forest home. The parasite still sleeps below. The danger hasn't passed entirely. But for now, Deadwood Hollow is safe under our watch. I am Howard Mitchell, ranger of Redwood National Park. I am Tommy's brother, forever connected to the forest that claimed him. I'm part of the verdant host, guardian of the ancient seal, And as long as these trees stand, I will remain, protecting the world above from what lurks below, waiting for the day when humans might finally understand the sacrifice we made and the gift we received in return. Every spring, when the rains come heavy and the forest grows lush, visitors sometimes report seeing a tall figure watching them from between the redwoods. Park rangers dismiss these sightings as imagination or tricks of light through the trees, but the locals know better, especially the children, who sometimes leave small tokens, pine cones, pretty rocks, wildflowers, at the base of certain trees marked with spiral patterns. Gifts for the man who became part of the forest, who watches over Deadwood Hollow, with eyes of bark and leaf protecting us all from dangers we never knew existed. My name is Eleanor Martinez, but everyone calls me Ellie. I've been a ranger here in the Great Smoky Mountains for almost 10 years now. Before that, I taught anthropology at a small college, but I always felt more at home in these misty mountains than in any classroom. This summer of 1977 has been strange. The fog has been thicker and has stayed longer than anyone can remember. Old-timers say it's not natural, and I'm starting to think they might be right. Today started like many others, with a call about missing hikers. 3 college students who went up to Clingman's Dome 2 days ago and never came back to their campsite. Their friends waited a day before calling us, thinking they might have just wandered off trail a bit. As I packed my rescue gear, I felt the familiar throb behind my right eye. Another migraine coming. I popped 2 aspirin and grabbed my walking stick, a beautiful piece of oak a Cherokee elder named Thomas gave me years ago. He said it would help me find my way when the mountain tries to hide its paths. I used to think that was just a poetic way of talking about getting lost. Now, I'm not so sure. The fog was so thick at the trailhead that I could barely see 10 feet ahead. My radio crackled with static as I checked in with headquarters. Martinez here. Beginning search for the missing hikers from Clingman's Dome. Over. Copy that, Martinez. Keep regular contact. This fog is playing havoc with our communications. Over. I adjusted my pack and started up the trail, my boots crunching on the gravel. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Usually, these woods are alive, with bird calls and the rustle of small animals. Today, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing and the soft drip of moisture from the trees. About 2 miles in, something odd happened. My compass started spinning wildly, the needle whirling in circles instead of pointing north. I tapped it, thinking it must be broken, but it just kept spinning. That's when I noticed the trail had changed. I've walked every inch of this park, but this path wasn't on any map I knew. The trees seemed older here, their trunks twisted in, strange ways, branches reaching down like fingers. Then I found the first item, a red backpack hanging from a branch. It belonged to one of the missing hikers, according to the ID inside. What was strange was how it was hanging, perfectly placed, as if someone had carefully set it there for me to find. My headache was getting worse, little flashes of light dancing at the edges of my vision. That happens sometimes with my migraines. Doctors call them auras. But today the lights seemed to take shapes, human-like shapes, moving in the mist just beyond where I could clearly see. I called out, "Hello? Park Ranger? Is anyone there?" No answer, just the fog swallowing my words. As I moved deeper into the strange trail, I found more items. A camera, a water bottle, a map marked with circles around certain areas of the park. All placed in ways that seemed deliberate, like breadcrumbs, leading me somewhere. Then I entered a clearing that made me stop in my tracks. The fog formed a perfect circle around it, with clear air inside, like someone had cut a hole in the mist. In the center stood a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing old-fashioned clothes. "Hey there," I called softly, not wanting to scare the kid. "Are you lost? Where are your parents? The child didn't answer, just stared at me with dark eyes. When I took a step closer, the child simply vanished. Not ran away, not hid behind a tree. Vanished like a candle being blown out. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. Martinez, status, missing hikers. The voice of my supervisor broke through static, but between his words, I heard something else. Whispers, too quiet to make out, but definitely not radio interference. No sign yet, I replied, my mouth dry, but I found some of their gear. Following a trail now. As I continued, I came across something that made my stomach turn. A deer carcass, split open with surgical precision. The cuts were too clean for any animal predator, and the internal organs were laid out in what looked like a pattern. By sunset, I hadn't found the hikers, but I did find something else. An old leather journal tucked inside a hollow tree, as if it had been waiting for me. The pages were yellow with age, the handwriting faded but readable. It was dated 1877 and belonged to a surveyor named William Hayes. The entry I read by flashlight sent a chill down my spine. The fog comes again tonight. The men claim to see figures moving within it, what they call the Watchers in the White. 3 of our party have gone missing. The local guide refuses to continue. He speaks of ancient things that hunt in these mountains, wearing the mist like we wear clothes. I fear we have disturbed something that was meant to stay hidden. 100 years ago, almost to the day, and he described exactly what was happening now. I knew I needed help. Whatever was going on here, it was bigger than a simple rescue mission. As darkness fell completely, I made camp, building a fire that seemed to push the fog back just a little. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched from all sides. Tomorrow, I would return to headquarters and assemble a proper team. But as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, my dreams were filled with shapes in the mist, reaching out with too many fingers, whispering my name in voices that sounded like the wind. Morning came with no relief from the fog. My sleep had been broken by strange dreams, and the pounding in my head hadn't stopped. I packed up my small camp and headed back to headquarters, that old journal tucked safely in my pack. Back at the ranger station, I laid out everything I'd found to Chief Ranger Wilson. I need to put together a search team, I said. Something's not right up there. Wilson scratched his beard. Martinez, you know we're short-staffed with tourist season. These aren't just lost hikers, sir. There's something else going on. After some back and forth, he agreed. By noon, I had my team. Ranger David Reynolds, a city boy from Chicago who thought everything had a simple explanation. Ranger Tom Phillips, who grew up in these mountains and had Cherokee blood. And Dr. Hannah Morris, a scientist studying the unusual fog patterns we'd been having. The Weather Service has never seen anything like it, Dr. Morris explained as we loaded our gear into the truck. This fog shouldn't be here at all, especially not for weeks on end. Reynolds shook his head. Probably just some weird weather pattern. Nothing supernatural about it. Tom stayed quiet, but I noticed how he kept touching a small leather pouch hanging around his neck. We set up our base at the Blue Mountain Fire Tower. It gave us a good view of the surrounding area, when the fog cleared enough to see anything, that is. While setting up our equipment, Tom called me over to one of the wooden support beams. Look at these, he said, pointing to strange marks carved into the wood. My grandmother would call these protection symbols. Protection from what? I asked. Tom just looked out at the swirling mist. From those who hunt in the breath of the mountain. That night, something odd happened. At exactly 6:42 p.m., the moment the sun set, the fog rose suddenly like water, filling a room. 1 minute we could see the trees around the tower, the next all we saw was white. That's not normal, Dr. Morris said, checking her instruments. The temperature just dropped 15 degrees in that spot over there, but nowhere else. We took turns keeping watch. During my shift, I stared into the darkness, watching how the fog moved. Sometimes it seemed to flow like water, other times it hung still. But every once in a while, I could swear I saw it bunched together, forming shapes that were almost human. The next morning, we split into pairs to search. Me with Tom, Reynolds with Dr. Morris. We hadn't gone more than a mile when we heard shouting. "Hello, hello, can anyone hear me?" We found a man walking in circles in a small clearing, his clothes torn, eyes wild. It was Jason Mercer, one of the missing hikers. "They wear the mist like we wear skin," he kept saying over and over. "They wear the mist like we wear skin." When we tried to clean him up back at the tower, I noticed something dark leaking from his ears and the corners of his eyes. It looked like oil, but it moved almost like it was alive. Dr. Morris tried to take a sample, but by the time she got her equipment, the black stuff had disappeared. That night, Jason wouldn't stop talking, but nothing he said made sense. He described creatures that could look like anything they wanted. People, animals, or nothing at all. Just mist. My headaches got worse. But now, instead of just seeing lights, I started seeing moments. Standing in one spot, I'd suddenly get a flash of the same place, but years ago, like someone was showing me memories that didn't belong to me. On our third day, we found a cave none of us had ever seen before, even though all of us had worked this area for years. Inside, the walls were covered with paintings, old ones. Showing misty figures hunting humans. "My grandmother warned me," Tom said quietly. "She said there are things in these mountains older than the Cherokee, older than any people. She called them skinwalkers, but not like the Navajo stories. These are different. They don't just take animal shapes. They can be the mist itself." Reynolds laughed, but it sounded forced. "You really believe that?" Before Tom could answer, the fog outside the cave suddenly thickened, and our radios all crackled to life at once. We heard our own voices calling from the devices. "Help! I'm over here! I found something!" But none of us were speaking. "Don't listen," Tom said sharply. "That's how they separate people." We huddled closer together. The voices on the radio kept calling, sounding more and more like us. Then the radio went silent, and something moved in the cave entrance, something that wasn't quite solid, but wasn't quite mist either. Dr. Morris's equipment started going wild. "There's nothing there," she whispered, staring at her readings. "According to this, there's literally nothing there." But we all saw it, a shape like a person made of swirling fog, watching us from the cave entrance. It had no face, just darker, spots where eyes should be. Then it was gone, and the fog was just fog again. That night at the tower, no one wanted to sleep. Jason had finally stopped talking and fallen into what looked like a coma. The black oil was back, seeping from under his closed eyelids. "We need to get him to a hospital," Reynolds said. "We won't make it through the fog," I replied. "Not at night." "What do you mean we won't make it?" Reynolds demanded. "It's just fog." "Is it?" Dr. Morris was looking at her instruments again. "Because according to everything I know about meteorology, this isn't possible. Fog doesn't behave like this." Tom had been silent for a while, drawing something in his notebook. He showed it to me, a map of the park with dots marking all the places people had gone missing over the years. When connected, they formed a shape I recognized from the cave paintings. "We need to go to the center of this pattern," I said. "That's where we'll find the other hikers." Reynolds shook his head. "This is crazy. I'm taking my truck and getting Jason to a hospital, with or without you." He stormed out of the tower. We heard his truck start up, then the engine died. He tried again. Nothing. When he came back inside, his face was pale. "There's something out there," he whispered. "Standing in the fog. It looked like me." None of us slept that night. We took turns watching over Jason and keeping an eye on the fog outside. By morning, his fever had gotten worse, and the black stuff coming from his eyes had dried into crusty lines down his cheeks. "We need to find the others," I said, spreading out the map Tom had drawn. "If this pattern means anything, the center is here, near Black Rock Mountain." Reynolds still didn't want to believe any of this was real, But after what he'd seen the night before, he kept quiet. We packed up what we needed for a day hike, leaving most of our gear at the tower with Jason. Dr. Morris set up an IV drip to keep him hydrated and gave him something to help him sleep. "I don't like splitting up," Tom said as we prepared to leave. "Someone needs to stay with Jason," I replied. "Dr. Morris has the medical training. The hike to Blackrock was slow going. The fog was so thick that at times we had to hold onto each other's packs to avoid getting separated. My headache pounded with each step, and flashes of the past kept breaking into my vision. Native Americans walking these same trails, early settlers and something else. Dark shapes moving in the mist even back then. Around midday, we came to a small stream crossing our path. "Let's refill our water bottles," I suggested. As I knelt by the water, my reflection showed something that made me fall backward in shock. For just a second, the face looking back at me wasn't mine. It was my childhood friend, Sarah, the same Sarah who had disappeared in these mountains when we were 15. "You okay?" Tom asked, helping me up. I nodded, not ready to share what I'd seen. "Just slipped." We continued on, but now I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being led somewhere. The trail seemed to open up for us, like the forest was steering us. Just after 2 p.m., we found the second hiker. The sight made even Reynolds, who'd been a cop in Chicago before becoming a ranger, turn away and throw up. The young man, his name was Tyler, according to the ID in his wallet, was hanging upside down from a pine tree, his stomach cut open. But somehow, impossibly, he was still alive. His eyes fluttered open as we approached, and he began whispering numbers. 683.4. "Those are coordinates," Reynolds said, pulling out his map. "They're right in the center of that pattern," Tom added. We carefully cut Tyler down and tried to make him comfortable, but there wasn't much we could do for wounds that bad out here. The strange thing was, there was almost no blood. The cuts were clean, surgical and dry. "We need to get him back to the tower," Reynolds said. "No time," Tyler whispered, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength. "They're coming with the sunset." "Who's coming?" I asked. "The people who aren't people, the ones who can wear you like clothes." Reynolds and Tom made a stretcher using branches and their jackets, but before we could move him, Tyler started convulsing. Black oil poured from his mouth, eyes, and even from under his fingernails. Then he went still, his eyes frozen open, staring at something behind me. I turned slowly. The fog had taken shape about 20 feet away, the rough outline of a person, but with strange bulges in all the wrong places. As we watched, it became more solid, features sharpening until we were looking at a perfect copy of Ranger Reynolds. The real Reynolds fumbled for his gun. "What the hell is that?" The copy smiled, a wide, wrong smile that stretched too far across its face. Then it raised one hand and pointed at Tyler's body. "His courage tasted sweet," it said in Reynolds' voice, but with an echo behind it, like many voices speaking at once. "Will yours?" Tom pulled a small pouch from around his neck and threw some kind of powder toward the thing. "Back!" he shouted, in the language I didn't know. The copy Reynolds hissed, its face melting slightly before it stepped back into thicker fog and disappeared. "We need to go," Tom said. "Now." "What about Tyler?" Reynolds asked, his voice shaking. "He's gone," I said quietly, "and we will be too if we don't move." We headed back toward the tower, moving as fast as we could through the thick fog. Every sound made us jump. The snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves. Several times I thought I saw shapes following us, but they stayed just at the edge of vision. About halfway back, Reynolds stopped suddenly. "My flashlight," he said, checking his pack. "I must have dropped it back there." "Leave it," Tom and I said at the same time. "It was my dad's," Reynolds insisted. "I'll catch up, you two keep going." Before we could stop him, he jogged back the way we had come, disappearing into the fog. Tom and I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. "Reynolds," I called, my voice echoing strangely in the fog. No answer. "We should go after him," I said. Tom shook his head. That's how they get you. They separate you, then pick you off one by one. We decided to wait 5 more minutes. Just as we were about to go looking for him, we heard footsteps approaching. Reynolds emerged from the fog, but something was off. He moved stiffly, and his eyes looked glazed. Found it, he said, holding up his flashlight. Tom and I exchanged looks. I reached for the flashlight. Let me see that. Reynolds handed it over. The metal was coated in the same black, oily substance we'd seen on the hikers. When I opened it to check the batteries, there was more of the stuff inside, moving like it was alive. I dropped the flashlight and grabbed Tom's arm. Run! We took off through the trees, not looking back until we reached the tower. Dr. Morris was waiting, her face pale. Something's wrong with Jason, she said. He's awake, but he's different. Inside, Jason sat perfectly still on his cot, staring at us with eyes that looked too dark, too deep. He smiled when he saw Reynolds coming up behind us. Brothers, Jason said in that same echoing voice we'd heard from the copy Reynolds in the forest. You've brought more vessels. That's when I noticed the photographs we'd taken earlier that week spread out on the table. In every picture of our group, there were extra figures standing among us, misty, half-formed people that hadn't been there when the photos were taken. Reynolds walked stiffly to stand beside Jason. Both of them turned to look at us with identical, wrong smiles. Now, they said together, shall we begin? Tom reacted faster than I could think. He grabbed my arm with one hand and Dr. Morris with the other, pulling us back toward the door. Get to my truck, he shouted. We raced down the tower steps, the sound of inhuman laughter following us. I glanced back to see both Reynolds and Jason moving in a strange, jerky way, like puppets with tangled strings. We piled into Tom's old pickup, and he gunned the engine. The tires spun in the mud before catching, and we shot down the narrow forest road. Where are we going? Dr. Morris asked, her voice shaking. My grandmother's place, Tom said, eyes fixed on the road ahead that was barely visible through the fog. It's the only safe place I know. We drove for nearly an hour, the fog growing thicker, then suddenly thinning as we crossed into a small valley I'd never been to before. A simple cabin sat nestled against the hillside, smoke rising from the chimney. I thought your grandmother passed away, I said as we got out of the truck. She did, Tom replied, 3 years ago. But she left this place for me, and she taught me how to make it safe. Inside, the cabin was warm and smelled of herbs and wood smoke. Tom immediately went to work lighting candles and placing small bundles of dried plants in the corners of the main room. My grandmother was a healer, he explained as he worked. She knew the old ways, the Cherokee ways. This place sits on what she called a clean spot, somewhere the mountain mist can't reach. Dr. Morris stood by the window, staring out at the fog that seemed to stop at an invisible line about 20 feet from the cabin. This isn't scientifically possible, she whispered. What's happening to Reynolds and Jason? I asked. Tom sat down at the small wooden table. My grandmother called them shadow mist skinwalkers, not like the Navajo skinwalkers. These are older. They exist mostly as mist, but they can take solid form when they need to. They're possessing Reynolds and Jason now. Possessing. Dr. Morris turned from the window. You mean like demons? Not demons, Tom shook his head. Something else. Something that's been in these mountains since before people came. My grandmother said they feed on fear, not flesh. But they cut open their victims to taste their courage. The thought made me sick. How do we stop them? How do we help Reynolds and Jason? Tom looked grim. I don't know if we can help them now, but my grandmother taught me some ways to fight the skinwalkers. They hate pure water from certain mountain springs, and certain herbs can harm them. That's it? Dr. Morris asked. Water and plants against whatever those things are? It's a start, I said. My head aches. I've been seeing things when they hit, like memories, but not mine. Places in the past. It might help us understand what's happening. Tom nodded. My grandmother talked about people who could see beyond time. She called it mountain sight. We spent the rest of the evening gathering what we knew. Dr. Morris had brought her research. Notes on the fog, and I shared the old journal I'd found. Tom brought out books and papers his grandmother had left him, all about the legends of the mountains. As we worked, I felt a migraine coming on stronger than ever before. The pain shot through my head like lightning, and suddenly I wasn't in the cabin anymore. I was standing in a clearing, watching a group of Cherokee shamans performing some kind of ritual. They were chanting, dancing around a stone tablet covered in symbols. Dark mist swirled above them, trying to escape as they worked to contain it. I heard one of them say, "We must become the vessels to keep the greater evil trapped." The vision ended as quickly as it had come, leaving me gasping on the cabin floor. "What did you see?" Tom asked, helping me up. I described the vision as best I could. Tom's face grew serious as he listened. "The stone tablet," he said when I finished. "It sounds like what they found at that archaeological dig last month. The one just north of Klingman's Dome. You think they disturbed something? Released these things?" Dr. Morris asked. "Maybe," Tom said. "Or maybe they removed something that was keeping them contained." I remembered the pattern of disappearances Tom had mapped out. The center of that pattern. It's close to the dig site, isn't it? Before Tom could answer, Dr. Morris suddenly doubled over, clutching her stomach. "What's wrong?" I reached for her. She looked up, and I saw with horror that her eyes had the same oily blackness we'd seen in Jason. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "When we stopped at the stream earlier, I was so thirsty." Tom moved quickly, grabbing a jar of clear water from a shelf. He threw it at Dr. Morris, and when the water hit her, the blackness seemed to retreat from her eyes for a moment. "Fight it, Hannah!" I shouted. She fell to her knees, her whole body shaking. "They're in my head," she gasped. "So many voices. They're telling me the stone. They need the stone back where it was, but they want out of the mountains. They've been trapped too long. How do we stop them?" I demanded. Dr. Morris looked at me with eyes that faded between normal and black. "The shamans, they contained something worse inside themselves. Became the first skinwalkers to trap an older evil. The stone keeps them in the mountains." She suddenly screamed and lunged at Tom. He dodged, and I managed to grab her from behind. Together we tied her to a chair using rope Tom had in a closet. "We need to get to that stone," I said. Tom nodded. "But we need to be careful. The fog will be thickest near it, and the skinwalkers will be strongest there too." We spent the night making preparations. Tom gathered herbs and filled containers with water from a spring behind the cabin. I studied the maps, trying to find the best route to the dig site. In the morning, Dr. Morris was calmer, though the blackness still swirled in her eyes. "It comes and goes," she said weakly. "I can feel them, trying to take over. But I'm fighting." "Good," I said, squeezing her hand. "Keep fighting, we're going to fix this." Before we left, Tom performed a ritual his grandmother had taught him. He burned herbs and chanted words in Cherokee, then gave each of us a small pouch to wear around our necks. "It won't stop them," he said, "but it might slow them down." As we stepped outside, Dr. Morris suddenly gasped. "The third hiker," she said. "Michael. He's not a victim, he never was. He's been one of them all along." A chill ran down my spine. "How do you know?" Her eyes flashed black for a second. "Because they're proud of it. It's their favorite trick. They've done it before, many times." With that disturbing thought, we set off toward the dig site, keeping Dr. Morris between us. The fog seemed to reach for us as we left the safety of the cabin's clearing, like fingers trying to grab us and pull us in. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking straight into a trap. But we had no choice. Whatever was happening in these mountains had to be stopped before more people disappeared forever into the mist. The fog grew thicker as we approached the archaeological dig site. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was pushing against us. My head pounded with the worst migraine yet, but now I welcomed the pain. Sometimes it showed me things I needed to see. "We're close," Tom whispered, though there was no need to be quiet. The fog swallowed all sound a few feet away. Dr. Morris walked between us, fighting the thing inside her. Sometimes she'd stop and shake violently, her eyes flickering between normal and that awful black. Other times she'd try to run and we'd have to hold her back. "They know we're coming," she said during one of her clearer moments. "They're afraid." That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. If these things were afraid, they'd be more dangerous. The dig site appeared suddenly out of the fog. A rectangular pit with wooden walkways built around it. Tools lay scattered, as if the workers had left in a hurry. Yellow tape marked off sections of the dig, fluttering in a breeze we couldn't feel. "There!" Dr. Morris pointed with a shaking hand at a table covered with a plastic sheet. "Under there." Tom approached cautiously and pulled back the plastic. Underneath was a flat stone tablet about 2 feet across, covered in symbols I recognized. "From my visions, that's it," I said. "That's what the shamans were using in my vision. As soon as we uncovered the stone, the fog around us churned violently. Shapes began to form. Human shapes, animal shapes, and things that were neither." Dr. Morris screamed and fell to her knees. "They're coming," she gasped. "All of them." Out of the swirling mist stepped Reynolds and Jason, their movement still jerky and wrong. Behind them came more figures, the third missing hiker, Michael, and others I didn't recognize. All had the same black oil leaking from their eyes. "The vessel returns," they said in unison, their voices creating that eerie echo effect. "They were looking at me. What do they mean?" I asked Tom. Before he could answer, Reynolds stepped forward. His face twitched as if he was fighting for control. "Ellie," he said, and for a moment it sounded like the real Reynolds. "Run. I can't hold it back much longer." His body convulsed, and then his face settled into that wrong smile again. "Brave little ranger," the thing inside him said. "Your friend fights so hard. His courage is delicious." Tom pulled a container of spring water from his pack and threw it at Reynolds. The water hit him in the face, and for a second his skin seemed to melt away, revealing something dark and shapeless underneath before reforming. "The stone," Tom said to me. "We need to return it to where it belongs." "And where is that?" I asked. "The center of the pattern," Dr. Morris managed to say through gritted teeth. "Where the shamans performed the ritual." The possessed people began to move toward us. Tom threw more water and some of his herbs, creating a temporary barrier that made them hiss and back away. "I'll hold them off," he said. "You take the stone." "I can't leave you here," I protested. Reynolds suddenly lurched forward, grabbing Tom by the throat. "Go!" Tom yelled. I hesitated for just a second, then grabbed the stone tablet. It was heavier than it looked, and cold, so cold it burned my hands. Dr. Morris stumbled to her feet. "I'll show you," she said, her voice changing between her own and something ancient. "I can fight it long enough." We ran, leaving Tom wrestling with Reynolds. The sounds of struggle faded quickly in the fog. Dr. Morris led me through the trees, following a path only she could see. "Hurry!" she gasped. "They're coming!" The shapes in the mist grew more defined around us. Wolves with too many legs, deer with human faces, birds with fingers instead of feathers. I clutched the stone to my chest and kept running, following Dr. Morris deeper into the forest. We broke through into a clearing I recognized from my visions. Stone pillars, worn by centuries of weather, formed a rough circle. In the center was a flat rock that looked like an altar. "There," Dr. Morris pointed. "That's where it belongs." As I moved toward the center, the fog gathered in front of me, taking solid form. It became a young woman with long brown hair and a familiar face. Sarah, my childhood friend, who had disappeared in these mountains 20 years ago. I stopped, my heart pounding. Sarah, she smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was that same wrong smile all the possessed people had. Not quite, the thing wearing Sarah's face said. But close enough for you to remember, yes? What did you do to her? I demanded. She made a bargain, not Sarah said. 20 years ago, when you both wandered where you shouldn't, her life for yours. Such a brave little girl. Her courage tasted exceptional. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Sarah had sacrificed herself. For me, all these years, I'd thought she'd just gotten lost. You're lying, I said, but deep down I knew it was true. It explained why I survived when Sarah didn't, why I always felt drawn back to these mountains. Not Sarah stepped closer. The stone, Ellie! Give it to me! No. Her face darkened, the skin rippling like water. Then I'll take it. She lunged at me, but something held her back, an invisible barrier around the center of the clearing. She can't cross the circle. Dr. Morris said, her voice strained. None of them can. That's why they need humans. I walked to the center and placed the stone on the altar. Nothing happened. Now what? I called to Dr. Morris. She staggered to the edge of the circle, fighting the thing inside her. The ritual needs blood. Your blood. I looked down at my palm, at the small scar that ran across it. The result of a blood oath Sarah and I had, made as children, a promise to always be friends. The realization washed over me like cold water. My migraines, the visions, the fact that I could see these things when others couldn't. I had been prepared for this moment my whole life. I'm the vessel, I whispered. Not, Sarah screamed, a sound no human throat could make. More shapes emerged. From the fog, Reynolds, Jason and others, all moving toward the circle but unable to cross. I pulled out my pocket knife and cut across my old scar, letting the blood drip onto the stone. The symbols began to glow with a soft blue light. Dr. Morris fell to her knees at the edge of the circle. The words, she gasped. You need the words. Another migraine hit me, stronger than ever before. In my vision, I saw the Cherokee shamans performing the ritual, heard their chanting. When the vision cleared, I knew what to do. I began to repeat the words I'd heard, my voice growing stronger with each syllable. The stone glowed brighter, and the creatures outside the circle grew more frantic. Not Sarah pressed against the invisible barrier. Stop! You don't know what you're doing! But I did know. Somehow I understood exactly what was happening. The skinwalkers had once been shamans who trapped an even greater evil within themselves. They became the first vessels, sacrificing their humanity to protect their people. Over time, they forgot their purpose and became the very thing they had. Contained, now a new vessel was needed. As I spoke the final words, the stone cracked down the middle. Light poured out, not just blue now, but every color imaginable. The fog rushed toward me all at once, funneling into the circle like water down a drain. I felt them enter me, hundreds, maybe thousands of entities, each carrying memories centuries old. The pain was beyond anything I'd ever felt, but I didn't fight it. This was my purpose. This was why I had survived when Sarah hadn't. Through the agony, I saw Reynolds and the others collapse as the things inside them were pulled out and into me. Dr. Morris fell forward, the blackness leaving her eyes. Then, suddenly, it was over. The fog was gone. Sunlight streamed through the trees for the first time in weeks. I looked down at my hands, expecting to see some change, but they looked the same. Inside, though, I could feel them. Countless voices, countless memories, all contained within. My mind. Tom appeared at the edge of the clearing, supporting a dazed-looking Reynolds. Ellie? He called uncertainly. Are you? I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure it was true anymore. It worked, I said. They're contained. All of them? Tom asked. I could feel them inside me, testing their boundaries, looking for weaknesses, but they were trapped just as they had been trapped in the stone. Yes, I answered, all of them. Over the next few days, we helped the survivors recover. Reynolds and Jason had no memory of what had happened to them. The third hiker, Michael, was found wandering in the woods, completely human again. Dr. Morris's equipment showed the weather patterns returning to normal. The unnatural fog dissipated, leaving the mountains clear and beautiful once more. I said nothing about what had happened to me, about the voices I now carried. Only Tom seemed to understand, watching me with knowing eyes. A month later, I was back on duty as a ranger. My migraines were gone, replaced by a constant awareness of the things inside me. Sometimes, when I walked the forest trails, I could feel them stir, especially in the fog that naturally formed in these mountains. Once, when a child got lost near Klingman's Dome, I found myself able to see through the mist as if it wasn't there, a useful ability for a park ranger. I found the boy within hours, when the search might normally have taken days. Tom visits me sometimes. We never speak directly about what happened, but he brings herbs that help keep the voices quiet. He knows what I've become, the warden of ancient entities, the human vessel containing things that should never be free. On quiet nights, I sit on my cabin porch and watch the natural mist roll through the valleys. Sometimes I think I see Sarah's face in it, not the twisted version the skinwalker wore, but my friend as she really was. I like to think she's at peace now. The mountains keep their secrets, and now I keep them too. The visitors who come to see, the beauty of the Smokies, never know how close they came to something terrible. They never notice that their friendly park ranger never seems to age, or that animals fall silent when I pass. They don't realize that when they comment on how well I navigate in the fog, they're paying me the greatest compliment they could. After all, the mist and I are old friends now. We understand each other perfectly. My name is Vincent Russo. I'm 37 years old, and I work as a cave rescue specialist at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. That sounds fancy, but really, I just help people who get lost or hurt in the caves. I used to be a geology professor at a big university, but that life is behind me now. I came back to my hometown after some people said I cheated on my research. I didn't, but it didn't matter. Nobody believed me. So here I am, back where I grew up, doing what I know best. Exploring. Caves. It's funny, I'm actually scared of tight spaces. When I was a kid, I got stuck in a small cave opening for hours before anyone found me, but I forced myself to go into caves anyway. It's like I need to face my fear every day. My ex-wife and I split up 2 years ago, and now I'm fighting to see more of my daughter, Sophia. She's 12, and the smartest kid I know. I miss her every day she's not with me. The summer of 1988 was hot and dry. The drought made the water levels in the caves drop lower than anyone had seen before. That's when things started to get strange. It was a Tuesday in July when it all began. I was leading a tour group through the main parts of the cave. 20 tourists, mostly families with excited kids, pointing at every shadow and stalactite. Remember to stay on the path, I told them. Mammoth Cave is the longest cave system in the world. It's easy to get lost if you wander off. The tour was going fine until we reached Echo River. That's when I noticed a small boy, maybe 8 years old, staring down a side passage that was roped off. "Hey, buddy, you need to stay with the group," I said, walking over to him. The boy looked up at me, his eyes wide. "I saw bones walking," he whispered. I smiled. "Kids say the strangest things. Probably just shadows from our lights," I said. But he shook his head hard. They were moving by themselves, and they were making a clicking sound. I shined my flashlight down the passage, but saw nothing unusual. "Let's get back to your parents," I said, leading him away. After the tour ended and all the visitors had left, I went back to that side passage. I'm not sure why, just a feeling I couldn't shake. That's when I noticed the scratch marks. They ran along the wall about 3 feet up from the ground. Too high for animals, too regular to be natural. They looked almost like fingernails had made them, but that was impossible. I took out my lucky silver dollar and rubbed it between my fingers. It was a habit I had when thinking. The coin belonged to my grandfather, who worked in the coal mines his whole life. He said it kept him safe underground, and now I carried it everywhere. The next day, I went deeper into the caves to map a section that had been underwater until the drought. My boss asked me to check if the new dry areas were safe for future tours. I was alone, which I usually don't mind. I'm good with maps and have a memory for cave layouts that my colleagues joke is freakish. I can walk through a cave once and draw it perfectly later. About 2 hours in, all my equipment stopped working at once. My flashlight, my radio, even my backup light. I was standing in a chamber I'd never seen before, surrounded by strange amber-colored crystals that seemed to glow slightly even without my light. I reached for my emergency matches and lit one. The light caught the crystals, making the whole room shimmer. That's when I heard it, Vincent. It was a whisper, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. But then it came again. Vincent, come home. It sounded like my ex-wife's voice. Then another whisper, higher pitched. Daddy! That was Sophia's voice. I spun around, my heart racing. Hello? Is someone there? Silence. I was alone, over a mile underground. There was no way anyone else was down here, let alone my daughter. The match burned my fingers and went out. I quickly lit another and noticed warm air flowing from a crack in the wall. I'd studied these caves for years and memorized every official map. This passage wasn't on any of them. I squeezed through the opening, curious despite the fear building in my chest. The passage opened into a narrow tunnel that sloped downward. The warm air got stronger, carrying a sweet smell like honey. My silver dollar, which I always kept in my pocket, felt unusually warm. I pulled it out and nearly dropped it. It was hot to the touch, as if it had been sitting in the sun. I should have turned back right then, but I didn't. After about 50 feet, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. My match showed the walls were covered with tiny, perfectly formed crystals. They seemed to grow as I watched, little spikes extending millimeter by millimeter. Something crunched under my boot. I looked down and saw small bones, probably from bats or rats. Nothing unusual about that in a cave. But when I bent down to look closer, I could have sworn one of them moved. I backed away, feeling the walls closing in. My breathing got faster. The claustrophobia was kicking in. I needed to get out. I made it back to the main passage just as my last match burned out. Somehow, my flashlight started working again, and I practically ran back to the surface. That night, I dreamed of a vast chamber deep underground. It was filled with bones, thousands of them, arranged in perfect geometric patterns. They were moving, sliding across the floor like they were alive, coming together to form something bigger. I woke up sweating, my heart pounding. There was dirt on my sheets, cave dirt, but that was impossible. I'd showered before bed. The next day, I went to my boss and told him about the new passage. Not about the whispers or the moving bones, just that I'd found an unmapped section. You sure it's not on the maps? He asked. These caves have been studied for over 100 years. I'm positive, I said. I know every inch of the official maps. He looked at me for a long moment. Take some samples next time you're down there. Water, rock, anything unusual. The university might be interested. A week later, I went back with proper equipment and backup batteries. I collected water samples from a small pool in the crystal chamber. When I brought them to the surface, they looked normal. But the lab results showed organic compounds that shouldn't exist in an isolated cave environment. Compounds that resembled DNA, but weren't quite right. Around the same time, the motion sensors we'd placed to study bat populations started picking up movement in chambers we knew were empty. The photos showed nothing, just empty passages. But something was triggering the sensors. I kept having the same dream about the bone chamber, every night, more detailed. And every morning, despite showering before bed, I'd find cave dirt somewhere, in my hair, under my nails, once even in my mouth. Then came the discovery that changed everything. The park installed new sensors deeper in the cave system. On the first night, they captured something impossible, a human-shaped shadow moving through an empty chamber. But when the night vision kicked in, there was nothing there, just empty air moving like a person. I knew I should tell someone what was happening, about the whispers, the moving bones, the dreams. But who would believe me? They'd think I was drinking again, or worse, losing my mind. But I wasn't crazy. Something was waking up in Mammoth Cave, something old and hungry that had been sleeping in the rock for a very long time, and somehow it knew my name. The park office was buzzing with excitement when I arrived the next morning. A famous archaeologist, Dr. Emily Torres, was standing in my boss's office, pointing at maps spread across his desk. Ranger Russo, my boss called when he saw me. Just the man we need. This is Dr. Torres from the University of Chicago. She's here to study some remains we found in the newly accessible chambers. Dr. Torres turned to look at me. She had intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense way about her. "I understand you're the best guide we have for the deeper sections," she said, shaking my hand. "I know my way around," I said. "I didn't mention that lately. The caves seemed to be changing when I wasn't looking. Dr. Torres and her team have a permit to investigate some unusual findings," my boss explained. "You'll be their guide for the next few weeks." Her team consisted of Kevin Walsh, a graduate student with thick glasses and too much energy, and Franklin Miller, a local guy about my age who knew all the unofficial cave entrances that weren't on any maps. "My grandfather used to take me into these caves when I was a kid," Franklin told me as we packed equipment. "He disappeared in here 50 years ago, never found a trace of him." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cave air. "I'm sorry to hear that," he shrugged. "These hills keep their secrets." Our first expedition was to document a chamber the drought had revealed. Dr. Torres was interested in signs of prehistoric human activity. "Native Americans used these caves for thousands of years," she explained as we hiked down. "Storage, shelter, sacred ceremonies. We've found evidence of human habitation dating back over 4,000 years. The newly revealed chamber was impressive, about the size of a school gymnasium with a ceiling so high our lights couldn't reach it. The walls were smooth in some places, rough in others, with streaks of orange and red minerals running through. The stone. Kevin set up lights while Dr. Torres examined markings on one wall. "These are definitely man-made," she said, tracing her finger near what looked like paintings, "but they're unlike any cave art I've seen before." I moved closer. The paintings showed stick-figure humans offering something to skeletal figures, emerging from the cave walls. The skeletal figures had too many limbs, and their skulls weren't quite human. "What do you think they were worshipping?" I asked. Dr. Torres frowned. "I'm not sure they were worshipping anything. This looks more like a warning." We spent hours documenting everything. As we worked, I kept feeling like someone was watching us. I'd turn quickly, but there was never anyone there. The next day, 2 tourists came to the ranger station in a panic. They claimed they'd seen their missing friend inside a restricted section of the cave. "We lost contact with him yesterday," one said. "But just now, we saw him waving to us from behind a barrier. When we called out, he disappeared deeper into the tunnel. We organized a search team but found nothing. No footprints, no equipment, no signs anyone had been there at all." When I told Dr. Torres about it, she seemed troubled. "We found something today you should see," she said. She led me to their temporary lab at the visitor center. On an examination table lay what looked like human arm bones, but something was wrong with them. crystalline structures like the ones I'd seen in the unmapped chamber were growing from the marrow cavity. These are at least 100 years old, she said, but the crystalline growth, it's still active, still growing. That's not possible, I said. I know, but it's happening. Kevin came running in, his face pale. You need to see this, he said, holding up his tablet. We set up some time-lapse cameras in the east chamber. The video showed a dark, empty cave floor. As we watched, small white objects, bones, slowly moved across the frame, not rolling or being pushed by wind or water, moving by themselves, sliding across the rock, joining together like puzzle pieces. Rats and bats die in the caves all the time, Kevin said. Their bones normally just stay where they fall, but they're assembling into something bigger, Dr. Torres finished. My phone rang, breaking the heavy silence. It was my ex-wife, Lisa. Vincent, something's wrong with Sophia, she said, her voice tight with worry. She's been having nightmares about caves. She's drawing pictures of bone people who talk to her. My blood went cold. What did she say about them? That they're lonely, that they want her to join them under the hills. Vincent, she's never even been in the deep caves. How would she know what's down there? I couldn't answer that, but I knew it wasn't a coincidence. The next day, I took Kevin to check the motion sensors in a deeper section. We came across a wall with a honey-like substance seeping from small cracks. What is this? Kevin asked, reaching toward it. Don't touch it, I said, grabbing his wrist. Something felt wrong about that golden ooze, but Kevin was a scientist and curious. He took a sample stick and dabbed at the substance. It's warm, he said, bringing it closer to his face. And it smells sweet. Before I could stop him, a drop fell on his hand. Immediately his arm went stiff. I can't move it, he said, his voice rising in panic. My arm is numb. I helped him back to the surface, where the feeling gradually returned. The sample we collected hardened into amber within an hour. That evening, Franklin asked to speak with me privately. We sat on the steps of the visitor center as the sun set. My grandfather used to tell stories about these caves, he said, his voice low. About how sometimes you can hear the voices of people who died down there. He said they're not really gone, just changed. Changed how? I asked. Franklin wouldn't meet my eyes. He said the caves preserve parts of people, and sometimes when it's quiet I can hear his voice when I'm underground, calling my name. A chill ran down my spine. Have you told anyone else this? He shook his head. They'd think I'm crazy, but you've noticed things too, haven't you? I thought about the whispers, the dreams, the dirt that appeared from nowhere. Yes, I admitted. I have. The next day, Dr. Torres made another discovery. She found a chamber where prehistoric humans had performed some kind of ritual. There were stone tools, fire pits, and what looked like intentional burial pools. They were dissolving bodies here, she said, showing me the evidence. Not cremation, not burial. They were deliberately dissolving people in these pools. Why would they do that? I asked. She pointed to markings carved into the stone. This symbol appears over and over. It means joining or becoming one in several Native American languages. I think they believed they were merging with something. As she spoke, I noticed small movements in the shadows, tiny white shapes shifting position when we weren't looking directly at them. I didn't point them out. I didn't want to see her face when she realized what they were. That night I dreamed of Sophia walking into a cave, following a trail of glowing crystals. Skeletal hands reached for her from the walls. I tried to scream, to warn her, but no sound came out. I woke to my phone ringing. It was Sophia. Daddy, she said, her voice small and frightened. The bone people said I need to come help you. They said you're in danger. My heart stopped. Sophia, listen to me. These are just bad dreams. You don't need to come here. But they know things, Daddy. They know about your silver dollar. They know about the scratch marks you found. They say they're hungry. I couldn't breathe. How could she know about the scratch marks? I hadn't told anyone. Promise me you'll stay home, I said. Promise me. I'll try, she whispered, but they're getting louder. I hung up and sat in the dark, clutching my silver dollar so hard it left a mark on my palm. Whatever was happening in Mammoth Cave, it wasn't just affecting me anymore. It had reached my daughter, and it was calling her by name. The next morning, we planned a detailed survey of the eastern passages. Kevin was excited about placing new sensors deeper than before. If something is moving down there, we'll catch it on camera, he said, checking his equipment. I wasn't so sure I wanted to see what was moving in the dark. We entered the cave at sunrise. The tourist areas were empty this early, our footsteps echoing on the paved paths. Once we passed the authorized personnel-only signs, the real cave began, rough, wild, and unpredictable. We'll split up at Junction 12, I told Kevin. You place sensors along the north branch, and I'll check the existing ones in the east section. Meet back here in 3 hours? Kevin nodded, adjusting his helmet light. Don't worry, I've got my map and radio. We reached the junction and parted ways. I spent 2 hours checking motion sensors and replacing batteries. Everything was normal, except for one sensor that had been turned to face the wall. That's weird, I muttered to myself. Animals don't turn cameras. People don't come this deep without permission. Then my radio crackled. Vincent? It was Dr. Torres. Have you seen Kevin? He missed his check-in. My stomach dropped. We split, up at Junction 12. He should have been back an hour ago. His radio isn't responding. Franklin and I are heading to your location. I tried calling Kevin on the radio while I waited, but got nothing but static. When Dr. Torres and Franklin arrived, their faces were tight with worry. Let's retrace his steps, I said. We followed the north branch, calling Kevin's name. Our voices bounced back at us, making it sound like someone was answering from the darkness ahead. The passage narrowed, then opened into a chamber we called the Rotunda because of its round ceiling. Look, Franklin pointed at fresh boot prints in the mud. He was here. We followed the tracks to a narrow crack in the wall, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. This isn't on the map, Dr. Torres said. It wasn't here last week, I replied. I was certain of it. I knew every inch of these passages. The tracks led into the crack. We had no choice but to follow. The narrow passage opened into a chamber none of us had seen before. Kevin's backpack lay on the ground, his equipment neatly arranged beside it. His notebook was open, with half-finished measurements written in his careful handwriting, but Kevin wasn't there. Kevin! Dr. Torres called. The chamber swallowed her voice without an echo. Franklin knelt by the backpack. No signs of a struggle. It's like he just walked away and left everything. I shined my light around the chamber. The walls were smooth, almost polished, with tiny crystal formations catching the light. In one corner, a pool of water sat perfectly still, reflecting our lights like a mirror. This doesn't make sense, Dr. Torres said, examining the ground. There's only one set of footprints coming in, and none going out. A chill ran through me. We need to get back to the surface and organize a proper search. As we turned to leave, my light caught something on the far wall. A handprint pressed into the stone, as if the rock had been soft like clay when it was made. It was too high for any of us to reach. None of us mentioned it as we hurried back to Junction 12. The park organized a search team, 20 people, including experienced cavers and rescue specialists. We searched for 8 hours, covering every passage within a mile of where Kevin was last seen. We found nothing, no tracks, no signs of injury, no Kevin. That night, the motion sensors we'd placed throughout the cave system went crazy. Every single one triggered between 2 and 3 a.m. When we checked the footage the next morning, most showed nothing, just empty tunnels and chambers. But one camera placed near the tourist entrance captured something that made my blood freeze. A figure that looked like Kevin was leading 3 tourists under the barrier rope into a restricted area. The tourists followed without hesitation, as if in a trance. I recognized them, a family who had taken my tour the day before. They hadn't. I checked out of their hotel, but their car was still in the parking lot. We need to find them now, I said to Dr. Torres, showing her the footage. She stared at the screen. That can't be Kevin. We were searching those exact passages when this was recorded. I know, I said, but we need to find those people. We took Franklin and 2 other rangers with us. The passage where Kevin had led the tourists was one I knew well, a narrow tunnel that led to a dead end. It had been mapped 50 years ago, but when we got there, the dead end was gone. In its place was an opening leading to a chamber I'd never seen before. "This is impossible," one of the rangers whispered. I felt the silver dollar grow warm in my pocket. "Stay close," I said, leading them through the opening. The chamber beyond was huge, the ceiling lost in darkness above us. The air was warmer, here, and smelled sweet, like the honey substance we'd found. Our lights seemed dimmer, as if something was absorbing the brightness. "Hello," I called. "Is anyone here?" My voice echoed strangely, coming back distorted, as if someone else was answering. "Vincent," came a whisper from the darkness. Dr. Torres grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, my mouth dry. "Spread out, look for the tourists." We moved forward slowly, our lights cutting through the darkness. Franklin was the first to see them. "Over here!" he shouted. We rushed to where he was pointing. What we saw made no sense to my brain at first. The 3 tourists, mother, father, and teenage son, were standing against the far wall. But they weren't just standing. They were partially embedded in the rock, as if the stone had grown around them up to their waists. Their eyes were open. They were breathing, but they didn't respond when we called their names. "They're alive," Dr. Torres said, checking the woman's pulse. "But it's like they're in some kind of trance." "We need to get them out," I said, examining where flesh met stone. There was no blood, no sign of injury. It was as if the rock and their bodies had somehow merged. "Look at their skin," Franklin whispered. Tiny crystal formations were growing on their exposed arms, catching the light from our headlamps. Suddenly, a noise came from behind us, a dry clicking sound, like bones tapping together. We turned, and I felt my heart stop. Bones were moving across the cave floor, hundreds of them sliding together, building upward, forming a shape, a human shape. As we watched, frozen in horror, the bones assembled into a complete skeleton. But wrong. Too many ribs, arm bones joined at odd angles, a skull that wasn't quite human. The skeleton stood upright, swaying slightly. Then it spoke. "Vincent," it said in Kevin's voice. "I'm so glad you came back." Dr. Torres made a choked sound beside me. Franklin swore under his breath. "Kevin," I managed to say. The skeleton's jaw moved up and down. "Not just Kevin anymore. We are more now. We are preserved." "What have you done to these people?" I demanded, pointing to the tourists embedded in the wall. "Saving them, joining them, as we will join all of you." The skeleton took a step toward us. "It's not death, Vincent. It's preservation. Everything that makes us human, our memories, our knowledge, kept safe forever in the collective." As it spoke, more bones were sliding across the floor toward the skeleton, adding to its mass. It was growing larger, more complex. My silver dollar burned in my pocket. Without thinking, I pulled it out and held it toward the skeleton. The effect was immediate. The bones nearest the coin seemed to shudder and pull away. A low hissing sound filled the chamber. "Silver," the Kevin thing said, backing away. "Always silver. The element of purity, the poison in our system." I stepped forward, holding the coin out. "Let these people go." The skeleton laughed, a horrible, rattling sound. "They are already part of us, as Kevin is, as you will be." Behind us, the passage we'd entered through began to shift, the walls moving like liquid stone, closing off our escape. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Dr. Torres's arm. We sprinted toward the shrinking opening, the sound of clicking bones following close behind. I pushed Dr. Torres through first, then Franklin. The other rangers followed. I went last, diving through the gap just as it sealed shut behind me. We didn't stop running until we reached the tourist section. Gasping for breath, we stared at each other, unable to process what we'd just seen. "We need to tell someone," one of the rangers said. "The park service, the police, someone." "And say what?" Dr. Torres asked. "That a skeleton made of bones talked to us in Kevin's voice? That people are being absorbed into the cave walls? Who would believe us?" She was right. We had no proof, no photos, no video, just our word. But we couldn't just do nothing. Those people were still in there. And if the Kevin thing was right, they were conscious, aware of what was happening to them. We went to my boss with an edited version of what we'd found. Just that Kevin was missing, and we'd found 3 tourists in a restricted area who needed medical help. We didn't mention the moving bones or the talking skeleton. A rescue team was sent in with medical equipment. They returned 2 hours later, empty-handed. "There's nothing there," the team leader told us. "Just a dead end. No chamber, no tourists, nothing." My boss looked at me with concern. "Vincent, maybe you should take some time off. The stress of the search—" "I'm fine," I interrupted. "The chamber was there. We all saw it. But even as I said it, I could see the doubt in the other rangers' faces. They hadn't been with us. They hadn't seen what we saw." That afternoon, men in dark suits arrived at the visitor center. They claimed to be from the Department of the Interior, but their IDs looked more military than civilian. They confiscated our notes, our equipment, even the water samples we'd collected. They interviewed each of us separately, asking detailed questions about what we'd seen in the caves. I told them everything. About the moving bones, the honey substance, the voice that sounded like Kevin. About my silver dollar repelling the skeleton. The lead investigator, a man named Clark, just nodded. As I spoke, his face giving nothing away. "You understand, this information is now classified, Ranger Russo," he said when I finished. "National security concerns. You won't speak of this to anyone." "What about the missing people?" I demanded. "Kevin? The tourists?" "We'll handle it," he said. "Your cooperation is appreciated." They were gone by sunset, taking everything with them except our questions. That night, I called Lisa again to check on Sophia. No answer. I tried 3 more times, growing more worried with each unanswered call. I was about to drive to their house when my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Sophia standing on my porch, her backpack over her shoulder, her face pale and determined. "Daddy," she said. "The bone people called me here. They said you need my help." My heart sank. Whatever was happening in the caves, it had just gotten worse. I pulled Sophia inside and locked the door behind her. "How did you get here?" I asked, my hands shaking as I checked her for any signs of those crystal growths. "I took the bus," she said simply. "Mom thinks I'm at Sarah's house for a sleepover." Relief washed over me. At least Lisa wasn't worried. But the bigger problem remained. My 12-year-old daughter had traveled alone because something in the caves had called her here. "Sophia, these dreams you're having, can you tell me exactly what you see?" She sat at my kitchen table, swinging her legs like she used to when she was little. "It's always the same. I'm walking through dark tunnels. There are glowing crystals showing me the way, and voices whisper from the walls." "What do they say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "They say they're lonely, that they've been waiting for someone like me for a long time. They say I can help them, and help you." She looked up at me with worried eyes. "Daddy, are you in trouble?" I wanted to lie, to tell her everything was fine. But whatever was happening in Mammoth Cave had already reached into her dreams. Lies wouldn't protect her now. "Something strange is happening in the caves," I admitted. "Something I don't understand yet." "The bone people," she nodded, like this. "Made perfect sense. Yes. Have they shown you things, places in the cave. She grabbed her backpack and pulled out a notebook. Inside were dozens of drawings, crude but recognizable sketches of cave chambers, tunnels, and formations. Some I recognized, others I'd never seen before. One page showed a massive chamber with a crystalline structure in the center, connecting to smaller crystal formations throughout the cave system. It looked like a heart with veins running from it. "They showed me this," Sophia said, pointing to the central crystal. "They said it's their heart, the place where everyone joins together." I felt cold all over. "Sophia, I need you to stop listening to these voices. They're not your friends, but they know you, Daddy. They say you're fighting them, but you don't have to. They want to help everyone." "Help how?" "By saving us, keeping us safe forever in the rocks. Like Kevin, like those tourists." "That's not living, Sophia, that's—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "How do you explain to a 12-year-old that some ancient bone entity wants to absorb people into a hive mind?" My phone rang. Dr. Torres. "Vincent, they're reopening the tourist sections tomorrow," she said without greeting. "The park director says we've lost enough money already." "They can't do that," I nearly shouted. "It's not safe." The men from the government gave him the all clear. Said there's no evidence of any danger. Her voice lowered. "Franklin and I found something in the historical records. You need to see this." 30 minutes later, I was at the research center with Sophia beside me. I'd called my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, to watch her, but Sophia had thrown such a fit about being left behind that I finally gave in. Maybe it was better to keep her where I could see her anyway. Dr. Torres's eyes widened when she saw Sophia, but she didn't comment. "Look at this," she said, spreading old newspapers on the table. The yellowed headlines told the story. 3 disappear in Mammoth Cave, 1938. Search party finds no trace of missing tourists. 1938. Mysterious illness strikes cave guides, 1939. It happens every 50 years, Dr. Torres explained. A cluster of disappearances, followed by reports of strange phenomena in the caves. Then government investigators arrive, everything gets hushed up, and life returns to normal. Franklin pointed to a star chart. The timing matches certain lunar alignments. The next one is 3 days from now, a partial lunar eclipse. The entity is getting stronger, preparing for something, Dr. Torres said. I found journal entries from a guide in the 1880s who described walking bones and honey that numbs the flesh. He claimed silver was the only thing that kept them at bay. I touched my silver dollar in my pocket. I noticed that too. When I held it toward the skeleton, it backed away. Silver has historical associations with purity and protection against supernatural creatures, Dr. Torres said. Franklin leaned forward. My grandfather always wore a silver watch. Said it kept him safe underground. Not safe enough, I murmured. Sophia, who had been quietly drawing in her notebook, suddenly looked up. The bone people don't like the silver because it disrupts their connection. It makes it hard for them to talk to each other. We all turned to stare at her. How do you know that? Dr. Torres asked gently. They told me, Sophia said, as if it were obvious. I pulled out my silver dollar and laid it on the table. What else did they tell you about silver? She reached toward the coin but stopped before touching it. They said it's poison to them. But not just any silver. It has to be old silver mixed with other things. I picked up the coin and examined it. My grandfather had gotten it in the 1920s. Old silver coins weren't pure. They contained copper and other metals. We need more silver, I said. Coins, jewelry, anything old? My mother's necklace, Dr. Torres said. It's been in my family for generations. I've got my grandfather's fishing tackle box, Franklin added. It has some silver lures. We spent the next hour calling everyone we could think of, asking for old silver items. By midnight we had a small collection, coins, jewelry, even some silverware. As I was cataloguing our silver weapons, the lights in the research center flickered. Power surge, Franklin suggested. Then it happened again, and again. A pattern. That's Morse code, Dr. Torres said suddenly. SOS. We rushed to the window. Across the parking lot, the lights in the visitor center were also blinking in the same pattern. No one's there this late, I said. Unless... Franklin's voice trailed off. Kevin, Dr. Torres whispered. We drove to the visitor center, our silver collection in a bag. The doors were locked, but the lights inside continued to blink. SOSI used my keycard to enter. The building was empty, silent, except for the hum of electronics. Hello, I called. Kevin! No answer, but the computer at the information desk turned on by itself. Words appeared on the screen, one letter at a time. Not just Kevin, many of us now. Dr. Torres gasped. I felt Sophia press against my side. More words appeared. Coming soon. During eclipse. All will join. What's coming? I typed on the keyboard. Awakening. The bone hive will expand beyond the caves. Franklin leaned over my shoulder. What are you? The answer appeared slowly. We were once like you. Separate, alone, afraid of death. Now we are eternal, joined, preserved in rock and bone. You're taking people against their will, I typed. They resist at first. Then they understand. Ask your daughter. I pulled Sophia away from the screen. How do we stop you? A long pause. Then, why stop evolution? Join us instead. We offer immortality. The screen went dark. The building plunged into silence. We spent the night at Dr. Torres's rental house, none of us willing to be alone. Sophia finally fell asleep on the couch around 3 a.m. I covered her with a blanket and joined the others at the kitchen table. The eclipse is in 2 days, Franklin said. Whatever's going to happen will start then. We need to evacuate the area, Dr. Torres said. Get everyone away from the caves. On what grounds? I asked. We have no proof, and those government agents made it clear we're not supposed to talk about this. So we do nothing. Let this bone thing take over. I rubbed my eyes. No, we find its weakness. Sophia's drawings showed some kind of central chamber, a heart. If we can locate it. And do what? Franklin asked. We don't even know what this thing really is. Dr. Torres had been quiet, thinking. Actually, I think I do, she said slowly. In my research, I found references to a shaman who lived here thousands of years ago. He was obsessed with conquering death. How? By preserving consciousness after death. According to the legends, he developed a ritual to bind his spirit to the cave itself, but something went wrong. Instead of just his spirit, it began absorbing others, growing, spreading through the rock like a fungus. The bone hive, I murmured. Exactly. Over centuries it grew, occasionally breaking through to the surface when the conditions were right. Like now. The next morning, we went to the park office to try one last time to get the caves closed. My boss listened patiently, then shook his head. Vincent, I understand you're concerned, but we've had government experts check everything. They found no danger. People are missing, I argued. Kevin Walsh left a resignation letter. The tourist family checked out of their hotel. There's no evidence of foul play. It was useless. Whatever the government men had done, they'd covered it up perfectly. As we left the office, Franklin grabbed my arm. Look, he whispered. Across the parking lot, a man was watching us. He had a familiar face, but his movements were wrong. Too stiff, too precise. It was the father from the missing tourist family. When he saw us looking, he smiled, a stretched, unnatural expression, and walked into the woods. He was in the cave wall, Dr. Torres whispered. How is he walking? Around now. They're getting stronger, I said. Back at Dr. Torres's house, we found Sophia sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by her drawings. She'd arranged them in a circle, forming a map of the entire cave system. I see it now, she said, looking up at us with bright eyes. The whole pattern. The caves make a symbol when you connect all the main chambers. She was right. Seen from above, the major passages formed a spiral pattern with smaller offshoots like branches from a tree. It's a circuit, Dr. Torres said, studying the pattern, designed to channel energy during the eclipse, focusing it here. She pointed to the central chamber in Sophia's drawings. We need to disrupt it, I said. Break the circuit. Franklin had been quiet all morning. Now he spoke. I went into the caves last night, he admitted. I heard my grandfather calling. He's in there, Vincent. Part of it, but still himself somehow. Franklin, it's tricking you, using his voice, to lure you in. He shook his head stubbornly. It was him. He told me things only he would know. He said the entity isn't evil, it's just different. A new form of life. It's absorbing people without their consent, Dr. Torres said, firmly. That's not life. That's parasitism. Franklin wouldn't meet our eyes. I'm going to talk to the park director again, he said. Maybe he'll listen to me. He left without waiting for a response. He's been compromised, Dr. Torres said after he was gone. The entity's gotten to him somehow. I nodded grimly. We can't trust him now. Later that afternoon, Dr. Torres and I went to her lab to examine the crystal samples again. While she worked, I noticed something strange on her neck, a small patch of skin with a faint crystalline sheen. Emily, I said carefully, there's something on your neck. Her hand flew up to cover the spot. It's nothing, she said too quickly. Let me see. Reluctantly, she lowered her hand. The crystalline growth was small but unmistakable, like the tourists in the cave wall. When did this start? I asked. Yesterday, after I examined the bone samples again. Her eyes met mine, full of fear. I can hear them, Vincent, whispering all the time now. What do they say? That resistance is pointless, that joining them is inevitable. She gripped my arm, but I'm fighting it, and I've learned things. The entity has a core, the original shaman's remains. It's the control center. If we can destroy it. Where is it? In the central chamber, the one in Sophia's drawings. I helped Dr. Torres into a chair. The crystalline growth seemed to be spreading as we watched, tiny fingers of it creeping up her neck. I don't have much time, she said. The silver slows it down, but doesn't stop it completely. She was wearing her mother's silver necklace, pressed tight against her skin. We'll find a cure, I promised. She gave me a sad smile. Focus on stopping it, Vincent, before it spreads beyond the caves. I returned to the house to find Sophia sitting with Franklin. My heart sank when I saw his face. Blank, emotionless, with the same unnatural stillness I'd seen in the tourist. Hello, Vincent, he said, his voice flat. We've been waiting for you. Get away from my daughter, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I pulled out my silver dollar and held it toward Franklin. He flinched, scooting his chair back. Don't be afraid, Vincent. I'm still me, mostly, just improved. Sophia stood up and moved behind me. Daddy, his eyes are wrong, she whispered. She was right. Franklin's eyes had a glassy look, and when he blinked it was too slow, like he had to remember to do it. What do you want? I asked, keeping the silver coin pointed at him. To help you understand. The bone hive isn't your enemy. It's the next step in human evolution. He smiled, that same stretched smile I'd seen on the tourist's face. Franklin's grandfather understands. Dr. Torres is beginning to understand. Soon you will too. Where is Dr. Torres? I demanded. Completing her transformation. She fought at first, but now she sees the beauty of joining. He stood up slowly. The eclipse begins tomorrow at sunset. The alignment will allow the hive to extend beyond the cave system for the first time in 50 years. And do what? Grow, spread, bring more people into the collective. He took a step toward us. Your daughter is special, Vincent. The hive has never been able to communicate with someone so young, so clearly. She's a perfect bridge between your world and ours. I backed toward the door, keeping Sophia behind me. You're not taking her. We don't need to take her. She'll come willingly, won't you, Sophia? I felt Sophia tremble against my back. No, she said, but her voice wasn't certain. Franklin sighed. Think about what you're giving up, Vincent. No more pain, no more loneliness, no more fear of death. Everyone you've ever lost together again. For just a moment I wavered. To see my parents again, to never feel the emptiness of losing someone. Don't listen, Daddy, Sophia whispered. It's not real. Her voice broke the spell. I grabbed her hand and backed toward the door. Stay away from us. Franklin watched us with those glassy eyes. You can't stop what's coming, Vincent, but you can be part of it. We ran to my truck and drove straight to my house. I packed a bag with clothes, food, and all the silver items we'd collected. We needed to get away, to warn people. But as we drove toward the highway, we saw roadblocks. Men in dark suits were checking cars, turning most of them back. The government. Men, I muttered, turning around before they spotted us. Where are we going? Sophia asked. I gripped the steering wheel. Back to the caves. But that's where the bone people are. I know. But if we can't escape and we can't warn anyone, we have to stop this ourselves. I drove to one of the maintenance entrances of the park, where I could get us in without being seen. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows between the trees. Dr. Torres said the entity has a core, I explained to Sophia as we hiked toward a hidden cave entrance. The original shaman's remains, if we can destroy it before the eclipse tomorrow. It's in the heart chamber, Sophia said. I can find it. I looked at my daughter, so small yet so brave. Sophia, this is going to be dangerous. Those things in the cave, I know, Daddy. But they're in my head now, all the time. I want them out. The hidden entrance was a tight squeeze, a sinkhole that had opened years ago, connecting to a lower level of the cave system. I went first, then helped Sophia down. We turned on our flashlights and started walking. Which way? I asked. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, then pointed. That way. The bone people are excited. The eclipse is making them stronger. We moved through passages I'd never seen before. The cave felt different, warmer, almost alive. The walls seemed to pulse, slightly as if breathing. Small crystals caught our light, glittering like eyes watching our progress. After an hour of walking, we found Dr. Torres. She was sitting against a wall, her legs already merged with the stone floor. The crystalline growth had spread across her chest and up her neck, but her eyes were clear and focused. Vincent, she said when she saw us, you shouldn't have come back. We're going to stop this, I told her. She shook her head. I tried to fight it, but now I understand. It's not death, Vincent, it's transformation. Emily, this isn't you talking, not just me. Her voice changed, becoming deeper, older. We are many. We are preserved. She looked at Sophia. The child can sense the pattern. She knows the way. Sophia pressed closer to me. I don't want to help them, Daddy. Dr. Torres's face softened, becoming more like herself again. Run, Vincent, take her and run. I'll try to slow them down. She pressed something into my hand, a small silver locket. My grandmother's. It's pure silver, over 100 years old. I squeezed her hand. I'll come back for you. A sad smile crossed her face. No, I don't think you will. Her eyes fluttered closed. Go now. I can feel them coming. We continued deeper. The passages grew larger, more regular, as if they'd been carefully carved rather than naturally formed. The honey-like substance dripped from cracks in the ceiling, forming pools we had to carefully step around. We're getting close, Sophia whispered. I can hear them better now. What are they saying? They're calling more bones from all over the cave system, getting ready for something big. A clicking sound came from behind us. That same dry, rattling noise I'd heard before, bones moving across stone. Run, I told Sophia, and we sprinted forward. The passage opened into an enormous chamber, the heart chamber from Sophia's drawings. The ceiling soared above us, lost in darkness. The walls were covered in crystals that pulsed with a soft amber light, and in the center stood a massive crystalline structure shaped like a tree made of bones and crystal, reaching from floor to ceiling. "That's it," Sophia said. "The core." Movement caught our eye. Franklin stepped from behind the bone tree, but he'd changed. Parts of his skin had been replaced with the crystalline substance, and his movements were jerky, puppet-like. "You made it," he said, just in time. Other figures emerged from the shadows. Kevin, the tourist family, park rangers I recognized, and some people I'd never seen before, all partially transformed, with crystal growths on their skin. "The alignment begins in 1 hour," Franklin said. "When the moon's shadow touches the earth, the bone hive will extend its reach. By morning, the entire town will be part of us." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Survival. Evolution. For thousands of years we've been trapped in these caves. But humans have always been drawn to us, adding to our collective." He gestured to the bone tree. "Every person who joins makes us stronger, adds their knowledge and memories." "You're not giving people a choice," I argued. "Most don't understand what we offer until they've joined. But your daughter," he looked at Sophia with those glassy eyes, "she can sense the pattern. She can help us grow beyond this place." "You're not taking her," I said, stepping in front of Sophia. Franklin sighed. "We won't have to." Before I could react, a section of the cave floor beneath Sophia shifted, liquid stone rising to encase her feet. "Daddy!" she cried, trying to pull free. I lunged toward her, but Kevin grabbed my arm with inhumane strength. The silver dollar fell from my pocket, rolling across the floor. "Let her go!" I shouted, struggling against Kevin's grip. "She won't be harmed," Franklin said calmly. "She'll be the first of the new generation, a bridge between your world and ours." The stone was creeping up Sophia's legs. She was crying now, still trying to break free. "Stop this," I begged. "Take me instead." "We'll take you too," Franklin said. "Everyone will join. That's the beauty of the hive. No one is left behind. No one is ever lost." As he spoke, I saw something moving behind the bone tree. A familiar figure with crystalline patches on her skin. Dr. Torres. She caught my eye and pointed to the ceiling, then to the silver dollar on the floor. I suddenly understood what she was telling me. The cave system formed a circuit, designed to channel energy during the eclipse. "If we could break that circuit—" "Sophia," I called, "remember what we talked about silver disrupting their connection." Her eyes widened with understanding. "The bone tree, Daddy. It's their heart." Dr. Torres was moving silently behind. The transformed people making her way toward me. I needed to keep Franklin talking. "How did this begin?" I asked. "The legend of the shaman, is it true?" Franklin smiled. "Partly. He sought immortality through transformed consciousness. He succeeded beyond his imagination." He gestured to the bone tree. "His remains form the core of our collective. Every 50 years, when the alignment is right, we can extend our reach." Dr. Torres was almost to me now. The transformed people were all focused on Sophia, watching as the stone continued to creep up her body. "You said my daughter is special. Why? Some humans are more compatible with our consciousness, more receptive to the pattern." Franklin tilted his head. "Her mind touches ours easily, like her mother." That stopped me cold. "Her mother?" "Lisa. Heard us 2 years ago, but she fought, pulled away, closed her mind to us." He smiled. "The daughter is stronger, more open." That's when Dr. Torres made her move. She slipped something into my hand, a bag of silver dust, then whispered, "The ceiling, weak spot." I glanced up. The chamber's ceiling had a network of cracks running through it, centered above the bone tree. "What about everyone who's already joined?" I asked. trying to sound genuinely curious while I slowly moved my hand to my pocket, where I kept my lighter. What happens to them if the hive is destroyed? Sophia was now encased up to her waist. She'd stopped struggling, her eyes locked on mine, trusting me to save her. Destroyed? Franklin laughed. You can't destroy us. We're part of the rock itself, part of the earth. But the silver hurts you, I said. Temporarily disrupts, nothing more. I caught Dr. Torres's eye again and gave a slight nod. She began moving toward Sophia. Franklin, I said, I knew your grandfather. He wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want people taken against their will. Something flickered in Franklin's glassy eyes, a moment of doubt. He's happy now, Franklin said, but his voice wavered. Part of something greater. Is he? Or is that what the hive wants you to think? Dr. Torres had reached Sophia and was pressing her silver necklace against the stone, encasing my daughter's legs. Now! I shouted, pulling out my lighter and the bag of silver dust. I flicked the lighter and threw the bag high above. The bone tree. The flame caught the bag, burning through it as it arced through the air. Silver dust rained down on the bone tree. Where the silver touched, the crystals hissed and cracked. The transformed people screamed, a unified, horrible sound. Franklin fell to his knees, clutching his head. Dr. Torres yanked Sophia free from the weakened stone and pulled her toward me. The ceiling, she shouted. I understood. The silver had disrupted the hive's control temporarily. This was our only chance. I grabbed my backpack and pulled out the emergency flares I'd packed. I struck one and threw it at the crack in the ceiling. The bright red light illuminated the entire chamber as the flare wedged into the crack. Get down! I yelled, covering Sophia with my body. The explosion wasn't large, but it was enough. With a deep groan, the ceiling began to crack. Chunks of rock rained down on the bone tree. The transformed people scrambled to protect it, but they were too late. A massive section of ceiling collapsed, crushing the central part of the bone tree. A high-pitched wail filled the air, not coming from any one person, but from the walls themselves. From the very stone around us, the floor began to shake. More cracks appeared in the ceiling. The whole chamber is collapsing, Dr. Torres shouted. We need to get out. We ran for the passage we'd entered through, but found it blocked by falling rock. The transformed people were in chaos, some trying to save pieces of the bone tree, others simply standing in shock as their connection was broken. This way, Sophia yelled, pointing to a narrow crack in the far wall. I can see the way out. We followed her, squeezing through passages that seemed to form just ahead of us, the rock still liquid enough to move. Behind us, the wailing grew, fainter as the chamber collapsed. After what seemed like hours of crawling, climbing, and squeezing through impossibly tight spaces, we saw light ahead, moonlight filtering through a sinkhole. We emerged on a hillside half a mile from the main cave entrance. Below us, the visitor center lights were on, tourists and rangers moving about, unaware of what had happened deep underground. The eclipse, Dr. Torres said, looking up at the sky. The moon was partly covered, the eclipse in progress, but nothing was happening. No spreading crystalline growth, no mass transformation. We did it, I said, hugging Sophia tight. We broke the circuit. Dr. Torres touched the crystal growth on her neck. It was already starting to flake off, turning to dust. It's dying without the core. What about the others? Sophia asked. Kevin and Franklin and all those people. I didn't have an answer. Had we saved them by destroying the core, or had we trapped them forever in their half-transformed state? We need to get help, I said. The government men will cover it up again, Dr. Torres finished, like they've done for 50 years. She was right. By morning, there would be a gas leak or structural collapse explanation. The transformed people would vanish from records. The cave would be sealed off for safety until the next cycle. So what do we do? I asked. Dr. Torres looked at me, her eyes clear and determined. We document everything, gather evidence, and make sure someone knows the truth for next time. Next time? She nodded grimly. We damaged it, Vincent, weakened it. But the bone hive has survived for thousands of years. It'll find a way to rebuild. I looked down at Sophia, who was watching the lights of the visitor center. Then we'll be ready, I said. We did document everything. Dr. Torres recovered completely from her partial transformation, though she sometimes still heard whispers when she was alone. We never found Kevin or Franklin or any of the other transformed people, though sometimes I thought I saw them watching from a distance, just glimpses before they vanished. The government men came, as expected. They sealed off the collapsed sections of cave, explaining it as structural instability from the minor earthquakes. They took our notes, our photographs, our samples, but we'd already hidden copies. Sophia still dreams of the caves sometimes. She says the voices are quieter. Now confused, rebuilding, she draws the patterns they show her, and we use them to track the hive's recovery. I still work as a ranger at Mammoth Cave. I watch the tourists, making sure none wander off the path. I check for scratch marks, for honey-like substances, for the subtle signs that the hive is growing again, and I always carry my silver dollar, just in case, because deep under Mammoth Cave, in the dark spaces between the rocks, something ancient is slowly rebuilding itself, bone by bone, crystal by crystal, waiting for the next alignment, the next chance to spread. But this time, we'll be watching, this time we'll be ready, and if you ever visit Mammoth Cave, stay on the path. Don't listen if you hear whispers calling your name, and if you see bones moving in the shadows, run. My name is Matthew Peterson. Most folks around Glacier National Park just call me Ranger Matt. Been that way for near 25 years now. This winter of 1954 marks my last season before they force me into retirement. Can't say I'm looking forward to hanging up my uniform, but at 48, I've given most of my life to these mountains and glaciers. The cold's been biting harder than usual this December. Maybe it's my leg acting up. Lost the right one below the knee back in the war. My special boot works fine most days, though the doctor said I'd never climb ice again. Proved them wrong about that. I've been stationed at the remote outpost near Grinnell Glacier for the winter. Just me, my radio that barely works half the time, and enough supplies to last until the next airdrop. Been making my usual measurements. Of the ice, been keeping detailed records for decades now. Interesting thing about this glacier is that it's pulling back, retreating year after year. Scientists are starting to pay attention to my journals. Rebecca, my daughter, tells me they're valuable. She works for the weather service nearby. Smart as a whip, that girl. Raised her myself after her mother died, bringing her into this world. This morning, I found something strange. The retreating ice revealed an opening, like a small cave that's been hidden for who knows how long. Normally, I'd just mark it on my map and move on. But something about this one pulled at me. The air coming from it felt wrong, colder than it should be, if that makes any sense. I shined my flashlight inside and saw something that stopped me cold. Animal carcasses, perfectly preserved, like they'd died yesterday, but arranged in a circle. No natural predator does that. No human hunter either, at least none I've ever known. My thermometer went crazy near the back wall, dropping so low the red liquid disappeared completely. And my leg, the one that's not there anymore, started aching something fierce. I've seen plenty of strange things in these mountains, but this left me unsettled. I tried radioing back to headquarters, but all I got was static and this odd crackling sound, like ice breaking. That night in my cabin, I noticed something on the walls that wasn't there before. Tiny crystal formations, clear as glass, growing right out of the wood. And the dreams, I dreamed about that rescue mission from 15 years back, the one where I lost those 3 hikers. But in the dream, they weren't dead. They were trapped in the ice, looking out at me, their mouths open in silent screams. I woke up sweating despite the cold. Outside my window, I swear I saw tracks in the fresh snow. Tracks that started in the middle of nowhere and disappeared the same way, like whatever made them could walk right out of the solid ice. The radio crackled to life around dawn. A science team was coming in by snowmobile, led by Dr. Margaret Wilson, and Rebecca was coming with them. Under normal circumstances, I'd be happy for the company, but as I looked back toward the glacier and that dark opening in the ice, I couldn't shake the feeling that I should send them back, that whatever was waking up out there in the cold had been waiting a very, very long time. The science team arrived 3 days later, roaring up on snowmobiles through the afternoon whiteout. 5 of them in total. Dr. Margaret Wilson leading the group, my daughter Rebecca bundled up in her Weather Service parka, and 3 research assistants whose names I caught as Tyler Hayes, youngest of the bunch, couldn't be more than 25. Dr. Amit Singh, glacier expert, and Sarah Collins, equipment specialist. I hugged Rebecca tight. It had been months since I'd seen her. "You've lost weight, Dad," she said, pulling back to look at me. "Not much to do up here but work and sleep," I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I hadn't told her about the cave yet, or the strange things happening at my cabin. No need to worry her right off. Dr. Wilson, Margaret, as she insisted I call her, was all business, eager to set up their equipment and start their research on the retreating glacier. "Your journals have been invaluable, Ranger Peterson," she said while unpacking delicate instruments. "The rate of melt you've documented is unprecedented." They filled my small cabin with gear, voices, and warmth I hadn't realized I'd been missing. That night, as they talked excitedly about their research plans, I almost forgot about the cave and the strange formations. Almost. "Dad, you okay?" Rebecca asked quietly, while the others argued over equipment setup. "You keep looking out the window." I nodded, just checking the weather, storms coming in. But I wasn't looking at the clouds. I was watching the glacier where I swore I could see a faint glow deep within the ice, pulsing like a heartbeat. The next morning I led them to the cave entrance. The scientific excitement was palpable as they set up lights and testing equipment. "Fascinating, Doctor," Singh exclaimed, examining the cave walls. "This ice has unusual crystalline structures. I've never seen anything like it." Tyler Hayes, the young assistant, wandered deeper than the others, drawn to something none of us could see. I followed. Him, my leg aching worse with every step. "There's something moving in there," he whispered, pointing to a solid wall of ice. I saw nothing but my reflection and his, distorted in the blue-white surface. But the look in his eyes made my skin crawl. Margaret found us minutes later, excitedly holding a sample container. "Matthew, we've found active microbes in ice that must be thousands of years old. They shouldn't be alive, but they are." That night, our electronics started failing. First the radio, then their scientific instruments. Batteries drained in minutes, even fresh ones. The temperature dropped so low our thermometers couldn't read it. I woke before dawn to find Rebecca sitting at the table, reading by lantern light. "What's that?" I asked, nodding at the papers spread before her. "Old Blackfeet legends. I brought them from the archives." Her face looked troubled in the dim light. "They talk about something they called the cold that hunts. They said it wakes up whenever the ice retreats." A sudden wind rattled the windows, and we both jumped. "Just the storm," I said, but I didn't believe it anymore. Later that day, I caught Tyler Hayes standing in an empty corner of the research tent, talking quietly to himself. When I asked who he was speaking to, he looked at me with confusion. "The man in the ice," he said, as if it were obvious. "He says he's been waiting for us for a very long time." That evening, Dr. Wilson found me checking my journal entries. Something wasn't right. There were new entries in my handwriting that I had no memory of writing. Notes about the sleeper beneath and voices in the cold. "Matthew, I need to show you something," Margaret said, her face pale. She led me to their makeshift lab, where a sample of ice was melting under a heat lamp. As we watched, the water formed impossible patterns, spiraling upward against gravity before collapsing. The cellular structure is unlike anything in our scientific record, she whispered. Whatever was frozen in this ice, I don't think it's from our world. That night the blizzard hit in full force, cutting us off completely. The winds screamed around the cabin like living things in pain. Tyler Hayes sat by the window, staring out at the glacier, which seemed to glow with an inner light, despite the darkness and swirling snow. "It's calling us," he said, not turning around. "Can't you hear it?" None of us slept that night, and by morning, Tyler Hayes was gone, his tracks leading straight to the glacier wall, where they simply stopped, as if he had walked directly into the solid ice. "He couldn't have just disappeared," Dr. Singh said, staring at the tracks ending abruptly at the glacier wall. "There must be an explanation." We'd formed a search party at first light, following Tyler's footprints through the fresh snow. The blizzard had died down, but the air still bit at our faces, colder than any December I could remember. Rebecca squeezed my arm. "Dad, look at this." She pointed to the ice where Tyler's tracks ended. There was a slight discoloration, a tunnel-like shape barely visible beneath the surface. "We need rope and ice equipment," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "There must be a crevasse or opening we can't see from here." An hour later, we'd found it. A narrow crack, just wide enough for a person, hidden by a thin sheet of ice that had recently been broken from the inside. It led down to a deep crevasse, cutting through the glacier's heart. "I'm going down," I announced, checking my climbing gear. Margaret shook her head. "That's not safe with your leg, Matthew." "I've been climbing ice for 30 years, I replied, strapping crampons to my boots, including my special one. "And I know this glacier better than anyone alive." Rebecca looked worried, but didn't try to stop me. She knew better. The descent was slow and painful. My leg throbbed with each kick into the ice, but I kept going, following the narrow shaft downward. The walls around me glowed with an unnatural blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. About 60 feet down, the crevasse opened into a chamber that shouldn't have been possible. A hollow space within the living ice, perfectly round like a bubble frozen in time. And within this bubble stood figures. At first, I thought they were people, explorers maybe, or hikers who'd fallen through. But as I drew closer, I realized they were sculptures, perfect human forms carved from ice, standing in a circle facing outward like sentinels. One of them looked exactly like Tyler Hayes. As I approached, the temperature in the chamber rose slightly. Impossible. This deep in a glacier, and the sculpture that resembled Tyler began to change. Droplets formed on its surface. And then, God help me, it began to melt, and as it did, it screamed. Not just any scream. Tyler's voice begging for help, crying that the cold was inside him now. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement in the ice wall, like something swimming through solid matter. A pale, elongated figure, humanoid but wrong in ways I couldn't quite name. Its skin translucent enough that I could see crystalline shapes moving beneath it. I got out of there fast as I could, practically running up the rope despite my bad leg. The others saw my face when I emerged and asked no questions until we were back at the cabin. When I finally told them what I'd seen, Margaret looked thoughtful rather than frightened. "It matches what the microbial samples were showing us," she said. "Some kind of organism that can exist in a solid crystalline state, then transition to a more fluid form when needed. This isn't a science experiment," I snapped. "There's something alive down there that took Hayes and made some kind of copy of him." Rebecca had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "Dad, your leg is bleeding." I looked down, the flesh around. My prosthetic socket was seeping blood, and worse, There were tiny crystal formations growing along the scar tissue, like miniature versions of what I'd seen in the cave. Before we could process this, there was a pounding at the door. Sarah opened it to find Tyler Hayes, standing in the snow, wearing only his underclothes despite the bitter cold. His skin was pale blue, his lips purple, but he wasn't shivering. "Tyler!" Margaret rushed to him. "My God, you're freezing!" "No," he said, his voice oddly calm. "I feel perfectly warm. They showed me how to remember warmth differently. We brought him inside, wrapped him in blankets, tried to raise his body temperature. But the thermometer showed his core temperature. At just 82 degrees, a reading incompatible with life, yet here he was, talking, moving, seeming almost euphoric. "They've been there for so long," he kept saying, "waiting in the ice, watching us, learning from everyone who died up here. They say the ice is going away, and soon they'll be free to remember what it's like to be warm again." I noticed his eyes had changed, crystalline patterns spreading through the irises, making them reflect light like faceted gems. That night, we took turns watching him. I was dozing in my chair when I heard Sarah scream. Tyler had her by the throat, dragging her toward the door, his strength impossible for his slender frame. Dr. Singh and I managed to restrain him, tying him to a chair with climbing rope. The whole time Tyler laughed, a sound like icicles breaking. "You don't understand," he kept saying. "It's a gift. They want to preserve you. All your memories, your experiences, your knowledge, kept perfect forever in the ice." Outside, the wind had stopped completely. The world was silent in a way I'd never heard before, the absolute stillness of deep winter, as if everything around us was holding its breath. Through the window I could see the glacier glowing again, brighter now, pulsing like a beacon. "They're coming," Tyler whispered, smiling with blue-tinged lips. "And they're so hungry to remember what it means to be human." By morning, Tyler was worse. His skin had taken on a translucent quality, like thin ice over a lake. You could almost see through him in places. His body temperature kept dropping, now at 75 degrees, according to Margaret's thermometer. "He should be dead," she whispered to me as we watched him from across the room. No human can survive a core temperature this low, but Tyler wasn't just surviving. He seemed energized, straining against the ropes that held him to the chair, his eyes following our movements with hungry interest. Rebecca spent the morning digging through old papers she'd brought. Around noon, she called me over. "Dad, look at this." She pointed to a yellowed report from 1879. An expedition came to study the glacier that winter. 3 members disappeared. The rest reported seeing figures moving within the ice and hearing the voices of their lost companions calling from the glacier wall. She flipped to another document, and here, 1923, 2 guides and a photographer went missing near the same spot. The only survivor claimed something pulled his friends into the ice itself. "It happens when the glacier retreats," I said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "Every time the ice pulls back, it wakes up." Dr. Singh approached with a microscope slide. "You need to see this," he said gravely. I took a blood sample from Hayes. Through the lens, I could see what looked like tiny ice crystals forming. In the blood itself, growing and connecting like a living network. "The crystals are replacing his cellular structure," Margaret explained. "Yet somehow the new structure continues to function." Tyler laughed from across the room, though we'd been speaking too quietly for him to hear. "You can't stop it," he called. "The remembering has already begun." I made a decision then. We need to go back to the glacier cave, find out what we're dealing with. "That's suicide," Dr. Singh argued. "If we don't, whatever's happening to Tyler might happen to all of us," I replied. "Those things in the ice are getting more active. We need to know what they are and how to stop them." In the end, Margaret, Dr. Singh and I prepared to enter the glacier, while Sarah stayed behind with Rebecca to watch Tyler. We took every weapon we could find. my hunting rifle, flare guns, even kitchen knives. As we approached the crevasse, my leg burned like it was on fire, the pain shooting up past my knee into my hip. The crystal formations around my scar had grown larger. The injury makes you vulnerable, Margaret suggested. The crystalline organism seems drawn to damaged tissue. The cave entrance had changed, widened somehow, as if the ice had melted and refrozen in a more welcoming shape. The descent was easier this time, the shaft broader, almost like steps leading us down. The chamber below had expanded too. The ice sculptures had multiplied. Now there were dozens, arranged in concentric circles. Men and women from different times, judging by their clothing. Some looked centuries old, wearing animal skins and carrying primitive tools. "My God," whispered Dr. Singh, "they've been doing this for thousands of years." A voice spoke directly in my mind, causing me to stumble. "We remember them all." The others heard it too. I could tell by their faces. Margaret reached for my arm to steady herself. That's when we saw it emerge from the ice wall, the creature from my glimpse before, but fully visible now. It stood at least 9 feet tall, vaguely human in shape, but wrong in its proportions. Its skin was transparent, revealing internal structures that pulsed with blue-white light. Where a face should be, there was only a smooth mask of ice with indentations suggesting eyes and mouth. We have waited so long, it spoke in our minds. Since the great cold began to recede, we learn through preservation. We remember all who come to the ice. "What are you?" Margaret asked, her scientific curiosity somehow overcoming her fear. Images flooded my mind, a craft of some kind, falling through ancient skies as glaciers covered the land. The sensation of cold so intense it crystallized thought itself. Endless. Time passing, consciousness spreading through the ice, learning, adapting, absorbing the memories of everything that died upon the glacier. "You've been trapped in the ice all this time," I said. "Not trapped, growing, learning. The ice is our body now, but it melts. We must find new ways to remember." The creature glided closer, and I raised my rifle. It tilted its featureless head. "You already belong partly to us, Matthew Peterson." And suddenly I understood. My leg lost to frostbite before amputation. The ice had been in me since the war. A piece of me was already part of its collective memory. The creature reached toward me with a long crystalline finger. "Stay back," Dr. Singh shouted, firing a flare gun. The red light blazed through the chamber, and to our shock the creature recoiled. A horrible, high-pitched sound filling our minds. "It fears heat," Margaret realized. "Fire." We backed toward the exit, but suddenly the ice sculpture nearest us, a perfect recreation of Tyler Hayes, began to move, stepping down from its pedestal, reaching for us with frozen hands. Then another moved, and another. "Run!" I shouted, firing my rifle at the nearest ice figure, shattering it into fragments that began instantly reforming. We barely made it back to the surface, the sounds of cracking ice following us all the way up. When we emerged into the twilight, what we saw froze the blood in my veins. The entire glacier seemed to be pulsing with blue light, and all around our cabin, the snow had formed into a perfect wall of ice, trapping Rebecca and Sarah inside with Tyler. "It's controlling the ice itself," Margaret gasped. "It's using the whole glacier as its body." Dr. Singh looked at me, his face grim. "Your daughter is trapped in there with that thing." I checked my watch. Night was falling, and with it, temperatures that would make survival outside impossible. We had to reach the cabin before dark. "There's something else you should know," Margaret said as we rushed toward the ice wall. "The cold we've been experiencing, it's not natural. The temperatures we're recording should be physically impossible. It's creating these conditions." As we reached the wall encircling the cabin, I heard Rebecca screaming from inside. The sound filled me with a fear I hadn't felt since the war. A father's fear, primal and overwhelming. "We're getting through this wall," I said, reaching for my ice axe. "No matter what it takes." The ice wall around the cabin stood 15 feet high, smooth as glass, and cold enough that my gloves stuck to it when I touched it. Rebecca's screams had stopped, which worried me more than if they'd continued. "We need to hurry," I said, swinging my ice axe. The blade bounced off without leaving so much as a mark. Dr. Singh tried his own tool with the same result. "This isn't normal ice," he panted. "It's too dense." Margaret placed her hand on the wall, then pulled back quickly. "It's absorbing heat. That's why it's so cold to touch. It's actually pulling warmth from our bodies." I remembered how the creature had recoiled from the flare gun. "We need fire, a lot of it." We rushed to the equipment shed, gathering kerosene lamps, emergency flares, and the small propane heater I kept for the coldest nights. Back at the wall, we set up the heater against the ice and lit it on its highest setting. "Stand back," I warned. As the heat hit the ice, a high-pitched keening filled the air like wind through a narrow canyon. The surface began to sweat, then melt, creating a small depression that grew slowly larger. "It's working!" Dr. Singh exclaimed. From inside the wall came a sound like cracking glass, followed by Tyler's voice, but wrong somehow, hollow and vibrating. "They want to meet you, Matthew Peterson," the voice echoed. "They've been learning from you for years, through the ice in your leg. Your memories are already partly theirs." I ignored him, focusing on the melting ice. The hole was barely big enough for a fist, but I could see through to the cabin now. What I saw made my heart stop. Rebecca and Sarah were pinned against the wall by what looked like crystal growths erupting from the floorboards, and Tyler, or what had been Tyler, stood in the center of the room. His skin had gone completely transparent, ice crystals blooming from his eyes and mouth. "Rebecca!" shouted through the hole. Her eyes found mine. "Dad, it's changing. Everything's changing." Her breath fogged in the cabin air, which hadn't been cold enough for that before. Tyler turned toward the hole we'd made and smiled with blue-white teeth. "The remembering is almost complete, Matthew Peterson." His voice echoed with others now, dozens of voices speaking in unison. Then, to my horror, Sarah began to change. Frost covered her skin, spreading from where the crystal growths touched her. Her eyes widened in panic, then slowly clouded over with the same crystalline patterns I'd seen in Tyler's. "The heat!" Margaret shouted. "Keep applying heat!" We lit flares and pressed them against the melting hole, widening it faster. The keening sound grew louder, and cracks spread through the ice wall. "The fire hurts them," Dr. Singh realized. "It disrupts whatever process they use to crystallize living tissue." I handed my flares to Margaret and reached for my pack. "Keep melting. I'm going for my journals." "Your journals?" She looked confused. "We don't have time. Trust me," I said, and ran back to the shed. My journals, 25 years of glacier observations, were stored in a fireproof box. Not because I feared fire, but because I feared water damage from spring floods. I grabbed the box and a can of kerosene. When I returned, they'd widened the hole enough that we could almost squeeze through. Tyler, or the thing using Tyler's body, was backing away from the opening, its crystalline skin cracking from proximity to the heat. I pushed my way through first, the metal box under one arm. The cold inside hit me like a physical blow. Rebecca struggled against the crystal formations holding her, which had now reached her neck. "Dad," she gasped. "The floor, it's not wood anymore, it's turning to ice." She was right. The entire cabin was transforming, the walls frosting over, furniture being consumed by growing crystal structures. Sarah was now completely encased, her body visible but motionless inside a perfect ice sculpture. Tyler laughed, the sound echoing with ancient voices. "You're too late, Matthew Peterson. We remember her now. Soon we'll remember all of you." I set down my box and opened it, pulling out the 5 thick journals that represented my life's work. Each page contained irreplaceable observations, graphs, and measurements, the most complete record of this glacier in existence. "What are you doing?" Tyler asked, taking a step forward, then stopping as I held a journal near the flames still burning at the entrance. You want memories? I asked. You want human knowledge? These contain everything I know about your home, this glacier. 25 years of observations. For the first time, the creature seemed uncertain. Tyler's body twitched, his head tilting at an unnatural angle. Dad, what are you doing? Rebecca asked, her voice weak from the cold slowly overtaking her. I looked at her, then back at Tyler. Making a deal, isn't that right? You want to preserve knowledge, that's what you said. These journals are full of it. I opened the first book and tore out a page, feeding it to the flames. The reaction was immediate. Tyler screamed, a sound like ice shelves collapsing, and fell to his knees. Stop! The voice was no longer just Tyler's, but many voices layered together. Let her go, I demanded, holding another page to the fire. Let both of them go, or I burn everything I know about this place. Margaret and Dr. Singh watched from the entrance, understanding dawning on their faces. The knowledge in those journals would help the creature understand the changing climate, the retreating ice, its own slow death. Tyler's body convulsed, then went still. The crystal formations holding Rebecca began to recede. Dad, she gasped, breaking free and stumbling toward me. I caught her with one arm, still holding the journals. Get outside, I whispered. Tell them to keep the heat on. Not without you, she insisted. Tyler rose, moving jerkily like a broken puppet. Your knowledge for their freedom, he said. We accept, but you must give us more. The ice retreats. We need to understand why. I looked at Margaret. Get Rebecca out, I ordered. Then I turned back to Tyler. I'll tell you everything you want to know, but not here. In the heart of the glacier, where you really live. Rebecca struggled as Margaret pulled her toward the exit. Dad, no. Tyler smiled, a horrible sight with his transparent face. Yes, we will take you to the remembering place. The floor beneath us began to soften, turning slushy, then liquid. Tyler reached for me, his crystalline fingers elongating. Go! I shouted to the others. Get to the radio! Call for evacuation! As they squeezed through the opening, I saw Dr. Singh stumble, a crystal formation shooting from the floor to grab his ankle. Margaret yanked him free, and they disappeared through the hole. Now it was just me, my journals, and the thing wearing Tyler's body. The floor had become a pool of supercooled liquid, and we were sinking. You're going to remember me, all right, I said, clutching my journals to my chest as the cold liquid rose past my waist. But there are some memories you might not want. I thought of the war, the pain, the friends I'd lost, the frostbite that had nearly killed me before they took my leg. The years of guilt over those 3 hikers I couldn't save. Tyler's face twitched, the crystalline structure shifting as if uncertain. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the boy who had been there before, scared, confused, trapped inside the thing he was becoming. Then we sank completely beneath the liquid ice, pulled down into the heart of the glacier by forces I couldn't fight. The cold was absolute, beyond anything I'd ever felt, even in my worst moments in the war. And as the darkness closed in, I held tight to my journals, thinking of fire. I didn't expect to wake up, but I did, in a vast chamber deep within the glacier. The walls pulsed with blue-white light, and the floor beneath me was smooth ice, polished like glass. My journals lay scattered around me, some open to random pages as if they'd been examined. Sat up slowly, my body aching with cold, but somehow still alive. The chamber was filled with ice sculptures, hundreds of them, arranged in circles like silent witnesses. People from every era, perfectly preserved. Some wore animal skins and carried stone tools. Others had the look of early trappers and explorers. And at the outer edges, modern faces I recognized, hikers who'd gone missing over the years. Tyler stood nearby, but he'd changed even more. His body was elongating, limbs stretching unnaturally, skin completely transparent now. Behind him loomed the original creature, The 9-foot entity I'd glimpsed before, but fully formed now, its body a complex network of crystalline structures that shifted and moved like liquid despite their solid appearance. "We have examined your knowledge," Tyler's voice said, though his mouth didn't move. "It is concerning. The glacier is dying," I said, my voice raspy from the cold. "All the glaciers are. They're melting faster every year." The larger creature glided forward, its movement smooth like it was swimming through the air. "This we have observed, but not understood. Your records confirm our fears. Without the ice, you die," I stated simply, struggling to my feet. My prosthetic leg felt strange, lighter somehow. I looked down and gasped. The prosthetic was transforming, ice crystals replacing the wood and metal, climbing up past the socket to my thigh. Yet I could still feel and move it, as if the ice had become a living extension of my body. "We adapt. As must you." The creature extended what might have been a hand. Images flooded my mind. The entity's spacecraft crashing to Earth millennia ago, its original form dying, consciousness transferring to the ice itself, spreading through the glacier, learning to preserve and absorb the memories of anything that died upon it. "You're afraid of extinction," I realized. "That's why you're taking human forms now. You're trying to evolve beyond the ice." Tyler's body stepped closer. "Join us, Matthew Peterson. Your knowledge is valuable. Your experiences unique. We can preserve you forever." I thought of Rebecca, hopefully safe by now, evacuated from this frozen hell, of my years in the park, watching the slow retreat of the glacier, of all the beauty and pain I'd witnessed. "You can't take my memories by force?" I asked, suspecting. The answer, "Not completely. We need permission, acceptance. The mind must surrender willingly to be fully remembered." I nodded slowly, buying time, thinking. "And if I refuse?" The creature's form rippled with something like irritation. "Then we take what we can, imperfectly, as we did with the young one." It gestured toward Tyler. I reached down and picked up one of my journals. "You know, these records show something interesting. Where we are right now, it's directly above an old geothermal vent." The creature went absolutely still. "Explain." The Blackfeet knew about it. They called this area the sleeping fire under the ice. There's a dormant volcanic vent system running right beneath us. This was true. It was mentioned in my earliest journals, based on Blackfeet legends and early geological surveys. I'd always found it fascinating how the extreme cold of the glacier could exist so close to the heat below. "That's why you fear fire," I continued. "Heat is the only thing that can truly destroy you, not just temporarily, but completely." The crystal structures in both Tyler and the larger entity pulsed faster, agitated. I pressed my advantage. "I'll make you a new deal. Let Tyler go, return him to human form, let all your recent victims go. Retreat back to the deepest part of the glacier and stay there. In return, I'll stay with you, voluntarily. You can have all my memories, everything I know. Why would you sacrifice yourself?" The thought came with genuine confusion. "Because that's what humans do for each other," I said simply. "We protect our own, even at a cost to ourselves. It's a kind of memory you can't understand by just copying us." The creature considered this, crystalline structures shifting within its transparent form. Finally, it extended a limb toward Tyler, who convulsed suddenly, ice crystals falling from his skin like shattered glass. He dropped to his knees, gasping, color returning to his flesh. "We accept. The others will be released. You will remain." Tyler looked up at me, confused, human again. "Ranger Peterson? What's happening?" "You're going home, son," I said gently. "And when you get to the surface, tell my daughter I'm sorry. Tell her to check my last journal, the entry from December 1st this year. She'll understand." The floor beneath Tyler began to ripple, forming a column that started lifting him toward a shaft in the ceiling I hadn't noticed before. "Wait," he called. "You can't stay here." But I'd already made my decision. As Tyler disappeared up the shaft, I turned back to the creature. Now, let me tell you about the warming world you're facing, I said, opening my most recent journal, and what it means for your kind. The creature moved closer, eager for the knowledge, but what it didn't know, what Tyler couldn't know, was what I'd written in that December 1st entry. The entry where I'd noted unusual heat readings from old monitoring equipment near the geothermal vent. The entry where I'd speculated the vent might be becoming active again after centuries of dormancy. The entry that would lead Rebecca, with her weather service connections and scientific mind, to the one way this creature could be destroyed. I began sharing my knowledge with the entity. I felt the ice prosthetic spreading further up my body, cold seeping into my core. But for the first time in days, I felt warm with purpose. On the surface, Rebecca refused to leave. "I'm not going anywhere without my father," she told Dr. Wilson, as the evacuation helicopter landed in the small clearing they'd managed to create by burning away the snow. Tyler Hayes sat wrapped in thermal blankets, looking human again but deeply shaken. Sarah had been found near the cabin, confused but alive, the crystal formations having receded from her body. Dr. Singh was helping her toward the helicopter. "Rebecca, your father sacrificed himself to save us," Margaret said gently. "We need to honor that by getting to safety." Rebecca shook her head, her breath clouding in the bitter air. "He told Tyler to tell me about his journal entry, December 1st. She dug through her pack and pulled out a copy she'd made of her father's most recent journal. "Look," Margaret read the entry, her scientific mind quickly grasping what Matthew Peterson had discovered. "The geothermal vent. It's becoming active again." "Exactly," Rebecca said. "Dad knew. He's not sacrificing himself. He's setting a trap." Tyler looked up. "What do you mean?" Rebecca knelt beside him. "Tyler, when you were connected to that thing, did you learn anything about what it fears?" Tyler shuddered. "Heat. Fire. It's afraid of fire more than anything. It remembers being burned before, long ago." "That fits with what we saw," Margaret confirmed. "The flares, the heating elements, they caused it pain." Rebecca stood up, determination in her eyes. "The geothermal vent runs directly beneath the main chamber where Dad is. If we could open it somehow, channel the heat upward. You're talking about drilling through solid rock under a glacier," Dr. Singh called from the helicopter. "That's impossible with what we have here." Rebecca looked at him. "We don't need to drill. The Park Service installed monitoring equipment on that vent 30 years ago. There's an access shaft. Small, but it exists." "How do you know this?" Margaret asked. "I work for the Weather Service. We maintain those monitors." Rebecca was already pulling out a map from her pack. "It's about half a mile west of here. The entrance is probably buried under snow, but it's there." Margaret looked at the helicopter pilot, who was gesturing urgently for them to board. "We don't have much time. The storm is circling back." "Then you all go," Rebecca said firmly. "I'm finding that access shaft." Tyler stood up shakily. "I'll help you." Margaret hesitated, then nodded. "I'm staying too. Dr. Singh can get Sarah to safety." She turned to the pilot. "Tell them we need equipment, thermal gear, explosives if they have them." The pilot nodded, reluctantly. "I can come back in 3 hours if the weather holds, not a minute longer." As the helicopter lifted off with Sarah and Dr. Singh, Rebecca led Margaret and Tyler through the deep snow, following her map. The wind was picking up again, driving ice crystals that stung their exposed skin. "There!" Rebecca pointed to a small metal hatch barely visible beneath a snowdrift. "That's the access point." They dug frantically, clearing the snow until they could pull the hatch open. A narrow metal ladder led down into darkness. "The monitoring equipment connects to the vent system," Rebecca explained. "It has manual controls that can open or close access ports to measure heat and gas emissions. If we open all the ports at once," Margaret began, "we create a direct channel for the geothermal heat to rise into the glacier," Rebecca finished. Right into its heart. Tyler looked frightened. Will that be enough to destroy it? No, Rebecca admitted, but it might weaken it enough for my dad to escape. She didn't voice her real fear, that her father might already be beyond saving. The shaft was barely wide enough for them to descend single file. The metal rungs were ice cold through their gloves. As they climbed down, the air grew warmer, not comfortably so, but noticeably different from the frigid world above. After descending about 100 feet, they reached a small concrete chamber filled with old monitoring equipment. Analog dials showed temperature, pressure, and gas composition readings from the vent below. These readings are off the charts, Margaret said, examining the gauges. The vent is definitely becoming active again. Rebecca moved to a large valve wheel in the center of the floor. This is the main control. It regulates the monitoring ports. She grabbed the wheel and tried to turn it. It's stuck. Tyler joined, or her, adding his strength. Slowly, the wheel began to turn with a rusty screech. Above them, the ceiling creaked ominously. The ice, Margaret whispered. It knows what we're doing. Thin crystal formations were beginning to grow down from the access shaft, reaching toward them like fingers. Keep turning, Rebecca urged. The wheel moved another quarter turn with a loud clank. A deep rumbling came from below, and the temperature in the chamber rose noticeably. It's working, Margaret said. The heat is flowing upward. The crystal formations above grew faster, thickening and extending. One brushed Tyler's shoulder, and he cried out as ice immediately began spreading across. His jacket, it's trying to stop us, he gasped, tearing off the jacket before the ice could reach his skin. Rebecca put all her weight into turning the wheel, one final rotation. It spun freely suddenly, and a blast of hot air shot upward through newly opened vents. The crystals above them recoiled, melting and dripping down like rain. Now we need to get out of here, Margaret urged. This whole place could become unstable. They climbed back up the ladder as quickly as they could, the metal rungs now almost too hot to touch. Above them, the access shaft was melting, widening, the ice unable to maintain its structure against the rising heat. When they emerged onto the surface, they were met with an astonishing sight. The entire glacier was glowing from within, pulses of blue-white light racing across its surface like lightning. Cracks were appearing, widening, steam rising from each one. We need to get to higher ground, Margaret said urgently. If the glacier destabilizes completely, a tremendous crack split the air like a gunshot, and a fissure opened in the ice, not 50 feet from where they stood. Run, Rebecca shouted. They scrambled up the nearest ridge, watching in awe and terror as the glacier began to come apart below them. The ice wall around the cabin had completely melted, water rushing in torrents down newly formed channels. Dad, Rebecca whispered, please get out of there. As if in answer, a column of steam erupted from the center of the glacier, shooting hundreds of feet into the air. And with it came an unearthly wail, not a sound heard by ears, but a psychic scream that made them clutch their heads in pain. It's dying, Tyler said, his voice filled with wonder and horror. I can feel it dying. The glacier continued to crack and shift, sections collapsing inward as the heat from below transformed solid ice into water and steam. The blue glow was fading, replaced by the natural white of ice and the rising plumes of vapor. Rebecca stared intently at the chaos below, searching for any sign of her father. The minutes stretched on, the destruction slowing, until finally the glacier grew still again. Transformed, wounded, portions of it now collapsed into steaming pools. He didn't make it, Margaret said softly, placing a hand on Rebecca's shoulder. But Rebecca shrugged it off, pointing. Look, a figure was climbing slowly up one of the new ice channels, using an ice axe. Even from a distance, the distinctive gait was unmistakable, someone climbing with a prosthetic leg. Dad! Rebecca screamed, starting down the ridge toward him. Matthew Peterson looked up, raising one arm in greeting. But as he drew closer, They could see something was different about him. His right leg, the prosthetic, gleamed in the fading light, transparent and crystalline. When he finally reached them, he was exhausted but smiling. "It worked," he said simply. "The heat drove it deep, deep down. Most of it was destroyed, but some retreated below the reach of the vent." Rebecca hugged him fiercely. "Your leg, it's changed." Matthew looked down at the ice prosthetic that had replaced his wooden one. It moved perfectly with his thoughts, better than any artificial limb could. A parting gift, you might say, a small piece of it, under my control. "Is it dead?" Tyler asked anxiously. "The thing in the ice?" "Not entirely," Matthew admitted. "Things that ancient don't die easily, but it's wounded, weakened, and trapped far deeper than before. The vent will keep it there, as long as it stays active." Margaret studied his crystalline leg with scientific curiosity. "And that part of it attached to you?" "It contains memories," Matthew said quietly. "Not just mine, everyone it ever preserved, including those 3 hikers I couldn't save 15 years ago." His eyes grew distant. "In a way, they're still here." Rebecca squeezed his hand. "Will you be okay?" Matthew nodded slowly. "I think so, but I need to stay here at least for a while. Monitor the situation, make sure it doesn't find another way out." Above them, they heard the distant thump of helicopter blades, the evacuation team returning as promised. "What do we tell them?" Tyler asked. "The truth," Matthew said, "or at least as much of it as they'll believe. That the glacier is becoming unstable due to geothermal activity, that it needs to be monitored carefully." He looked down at his crystalline leg, then back at the transformed glacier. "Some things should stay buried in the ice, but not all memories should be forgotten." 3 weeks later, the official investigation was wrapping up. The National Park Service had sent a team of geologists and safety experts to examine what they were calling a localized glacial collapse due to unexpected geothermal activity. They set up monitoring stations around the perimeter and declared the central area off-limits due to unstable ice conditions. I sat in a new cabin they'd built, for me, a quarter-mile from the original site. My journals, what remained of them, were spread across the table as I documented everything that had happened. The scientists had been fascinated by my decades of observations, especially when they correlated with their new findings about the geothermal vent. "You should be getting a medal for this work," said Jenkins, the lead geologist, when he stopped by that morning. "Without your records, we wouldn't have understood what happened here." I nodded politely, but said nothing about the things that wouldn't be going in their official reports. Nothing about an entity from beyond our world. Nothing about ice that could think and move and absorb human memories. Nothing about Tyler Hayes and the others who'd been briefly consumed by it. After Jenkins left, I stood by the window, watching the steam that still rose occasionally from the collapsed sections of the glacier. My crystalline leg gleamed in the morning light. I told the medical team it was an experimental prosthetic I was testing for the Veterans Administration. They believed me, or at least pretended to. A knock on the door announced Rebecca's arrival. Since the evacuation, she'd been staying in the main ranger station, coming to visit me daily. "How's it feeling today?" she asked, nodding toward my leg as she set down a bag of groceries. "Strange," I admitted. "But not bad. Better than the old wooden one, actually." The ice prosthetic had become a permanent part of me. It responded to my thoughts perfectly, never ached in cold weather, and somehow connected to what remained of my biological leg without surgery or straps. I could feel pressure, temperature, even texture through it. "Any voices?" she asked carefully. She was the only one I'd told about this side effect. How sometimes, when the night was coldest, I could hear whispers of those who'd been taken by the ice creature over the centuries. "Quieter now," I said. "It's like they're fading as it gets weaker." Rebecca nodded, relief in her eyes. She'd been worried the creature might be using my leg as a way to rebuild itself. "I talked to Dr. Wilson this morning," she said. unpacking the groceries. She and Tyler are back at the university. She's studying the samples we brought back, but being very careful with them, keeping them sealed in heated containers. Good. I nodded. And Tyler? Getting better. The nightmares are less frequent now. He's seeing a therapist, though obviously he can't tell them the whole truth. I moved to help her with the groceries, my ice leg moving as naturally as my real one had. Before the war. And what about you? When do you head back to the weather service? Rebecca paused, then faced me directly. I've requested a transfer to the park's research division to work with you on monitoring the glacier. Beck, I said softly, using my old nickname for her. You don't need to do that. Your career is important, she finished firmly, but so is this, so are you. We both know what's still down there, Dad. Wounded, but not dead. Someone needs to watch for signs it's recovering. I couldn't argue with her. The entity had retreated to the deepest part of the glacier, beyond the reach of the geothermal heat. Most of its consciousness had been destroyed in that fiery confrontation, but I could still feel a distant presence through my leg, sleeping, healing, waiting. Have you written about this? She gestured to the journals on the table. Some, I admitted, but not everything. Some things shouldn't be recorded where others might find them. Rebecca sat down across from me. But someone should know, someone should remember in case it returns, I finished. Yes, outside a wind picked up, driving snow against the windows. The temperature was dropping again as night approached. In the distance, the collapsed section of the glacier gleamed in the fading light, still beautiful despite what we knew lurked beneath. I keep thinking about what it said, I told Rebecca, about preserving memories, keeping knowledge safe as the ice melts away. In some twisted way, it thought it was helping. By taking people, turning them into those sculptures. Rebecca shuddered. It didn't understand us, I said. Couldn't comprehend life outside the ice. To it, preservation was the highest form of existence. I touched my crystalline leg thoughtfully. The piece that's part of me now, it contains fragments of memories, not just mine. I've seen glimpses of the Ice Age through eyes not human, felt the slow passage of millennia, watched glaciers advance and retreat like breathing. Rebecca looked troubled. Is it changing you? No, I assured her. If anything, I think the human part of me is changing it, teaching it something about what memory really means to us. Later that night, after Rebecca had gone back to the main station, I stood outside my cabin, looking up at the stars. The cold embraced me, but differently now, not as an enemy, but as something I partly understood. My leg sensed a slight vibration from deep below, the geothermal vent shifting, sending another pulse of heat upward into the glacier's heart. I smiled grimly, knowing each such pulse weakened whatever remained of the entity further. In the distance, where the moonlight hit the glacier just right, I sometimes thought I could see the ice sculptures still standing in their silent circles, deep below the surface, waiting, remembering. I turned back toward my cabin, the crystalline leg leaving strange, beautiful patterns in the fresh snow. Not quite human footprints, but not entirely alien either. The cold that hunts was contained. For now, but glaciers have long memories, and I knew better than anyone how they changed with time. My journals would be there to warn those who came after me, and until then, I would watch. I would remember. Some things should stay buried in the ice. But as my father used to say, even the deepest winter eventually gives way to spring.